You asked me to meet you early just for this. Claire Evans seemed a little surprised. Why don't you give it to her yourself? Because I can't see her before the birthday party starts, Michael Thompson replied with a smile. It couldn't be helped. Although his relationship with Olivia Sullivan was solidifying, they weren't officially together yet. Olivia's entire family would definitely be there today. If he tried to meet her privately and her parents caught them, it would be awkward. But Michael's gift was a dress, and he hoped Olivia Sullivan would wear it tonight, becoming the most dazzling star of the party. This task could only be entrusted to Olivia Sullivan's close friend, Claire Evans. Claire Evans agreed, as it was a small favor. After discussing his own matter, Michael Thompson looked at Claire Evans, hesitated for a moment, and brought up the amusement park incident. About the amusement park last time. Claire Evans cut him off bluntly. I know, Olivia told me everything. You set up that stuff in the haunted house, didn't you? You really deserve a scolding. Can't you do anything decent? I have no idea what Olivia sees in you. So, Olivia Sullivan had already confessed everything to Claire Evans. Michael Thompson could only offer an awkward smile, looking like he would take the scolding without arguing. Claire Evans asked irritably, I just want to know, did Jake Wilson know beforehand? Michael Thompson was about to say no, but he noticed how, after asking the question, Claire Evans pretended to be nonchalant while constantly glancing his way. She really cared. You haven't fallen for Jake Wilson, have you? Huh? Who would like a fatso like him? Claire Evans's reaction was unexpectedly strong, slamming the table as she retorted loudly. There are plenty of gentle and considerate men in the world. Looks are the most important thing to me. Even so, why does your voice waver so much? And speaking of looks, in his previous life, Jake Wilson was Michael Thompson's go-to model. How could his looks be bad? He could easily outshine those later pretty boy idols. Okay? Just a tiny bit less handsome than myself. Of course, no one else admitted that last part. Only he and his wife agreed. But that didn't matter. Even if Jake Wilson was currently round as a ball, the underlying features were there. He wasn't ugly, just a rather endearing kind of chubby. Michael Thompson remembered what Jake Wilson had told him last time and nudged Claire Evans. Then just reject the fatty cleanly. He's my buddy after all. Reject him decisively. In his hopes early, don't let him suffer so much, okay? That. Claire Evans's eyes darted around nervously. Suddenly, she slammed the table again, saying angrily, That's my business. What's it got to do with you? Why are you so nosy? If a manure truck drove by, would you grab a spoon and go taste it? Okay. Michael Thompson held up his hands helplessly. Your witty remarks are sharper than Margaret Thompson's. Claire Evans was furious. You already have Olivia. What Margaret Thompson? That Margaret Thompson is my mom. Claire Evans was instantly choked, speechless. She grabbed the box from the table and headed out, leaving. I can't be bothered talking to you. Michael Thompson leaned out of the booth and called after Claire Evans as she walked towards the shop in trance. Thanks. Next time I'll take you to Jake Wilson's house to meet his parents, huh? Claire Evans nearly stumbled, but didn't look back, just walked faster. Michael Thompson sat in the coffee shop for a while longer, finished his coffee, and then slowly got up and headed towards the Sullivan family residence. The birthday party started at noon and would last until evening. Michael Thompson arriving now was perfectly timed. As he entered the Sullivan family's courtyard, he ran into Ethan Sullivan. Ethan Sullivan's expression was somewhat playful when he saw Michael Thompson. He walked towards Michael. Michael noticed and was surprised, thinking his future brother-in-law was coming to greet him. But Ethan Sullivan walked past him as if he hadn't seen him, even deliberately bumping Michael Thompson with his arm. Michael Thompson, taken aback by the bump, glanced back at Ethan Sullivan. The last time he came to the Sullivans, Ethan Sullivan had avoided him. What was with him today? Quite bold. However, this was the Sullivan residence after all, and Michael Thompson didn't want to cause trouble today. The most important thing was celebrating Olivia Sullivan's birthday. He heard this future brother-in-law was being sent abroad at the end of the month, which was good. As long as Ethan Sullivan didn't cause problems in this life, he couldn't be bothered to orchestrate schemes to get his brother-in-law sent to prison. After Michael Thompson was led into the Sullivan residence by a family servant at the door, he found the place drastically changed today. The furniture on the first floor had been cleared out, making the living room seem exceptionally large. Successful men in suits escorted glamorous female companions, chatting with those around them. A long dining table nearby was covered with a white tablecloth, displaying exquisite fruit platters and food. In the center of the living room stood a champagne tower. Waitstaff in uniform, borrowed from a nearby hotel, moved through the crowd carrying trays of drinks. It was clearly an upper-class gathering. Faced with such an occasion, Michael Thompson, despite being a student, showed no timidity. He took a glass of orange juice from a passing waiter's tray, stuck one hand in his pocket, held the juice with the other, and blended in seamlessly. He walked around casually, observing, and soon noticed a circle of younger people. These youngsters had come with their elders, most of them children of wealthy families from around Green Valley. Many knew each other and naturally formed a small group. Michael Thompson noticed Violet Sullivan in the crowd. Today, the non-mainstream girl was still dressed exaggeratedly, like a peacock displaying its feathers. Violet Sullivan had spotted him the moment he entered and had been staring darkly at this traitor who had sold her out, her large eyes fixed on him. Michael Thompson, however, paid her no mind, even raising his glass to her with a smile. Violet Sullivan almost lost her temper, but could only glare hatefully at Michael Thompson. Michael Thompson's attention had already shifted away from her. After taking a shallow sip of his drink, he smilingly moved his gaze elsewhere. Every time I come to the Sullivan family, it feels like I'm surrounded by wolves. How interesting. Miss Vanessa Sullivan, you look even more beautiful in person than on TV. Within the circle of wealthy heirs, a young man in his early 20s was fawning over a woman. She was the most beautiful woman present. Around her early 20s, the prime of her youth, her waterfall-like long hair was tied in 2 braids. She wore a simple, elegant gown, her lotus root-like forearms pale and translucent. Most captivating were her peach blossom eyes. Every frown and smile tugged at the heartstrings. She had a lovely name, Vanessa Sullivan, and she was also one of the hottest rising stars in the entertainment industry today. Vanessa Sullivan was here today because the clothing brand she was currently endorsing was owned by the Sullivan family, which was why she'd been invited to the banquet. She wasn't just a guest. This was also part of her job. Vanessa Sullivan was scheduled to perform later. Besides her, the Sullivan family had hired several other singers as entertainment. Vanessa Sullivan was used to handling the advances from these rich kids, maintaining a polite, yet distant smile. Still, she disliked these kinds of events. If it weren't for the Sullivan family's endorsement fee, over $10 million, she never would have agreed to this kind of private performance. Simply put, the Sullivans paid too well. Watching these kids who'd been born with silver spoons in their mouths, Vanessa Sullivan couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Being born into the right family really makes all the difference. After exchanging a few pleasantries, her attention drifted to a purple-haired girl sitting in the corner, looking somewhat out of place. She knew this was one of her employer's children, though likely not the guest of honor tonight. The way Violet Sullivan was currently glaring fixedly in one direction, teeth clenched, caught Vanessa Sullivan's eye. Following Violet Sullivan's gaze, she saw a clean-cut boy wearing a well-fitting suit, dressed up like a miniature adult. After wandering around for a bit, Michael Thompson hadn't seen Arthur Sullivan or Olivia Sullivan. Just as he was about to find a place to sit, his phone suddenly rang. Michael Thompson pulled out his phone and glanced at the screen. It was Claire Evans calling. He answered the call, asking with a smile, "How's it going? Did Olivia like my gift? Was she moved to tears? She hasn't even opened the gift yet, but Olivia is crying. She won't tell me why, and I'm worried sick." Claire Evans' anxious voice came through the phone. Michael Thompson's smile gradually faded as he recalled his earlier encounter with Ethan Sullivan. He frowned slightly and said to Claire Evans on the other end, "Put Olivia Sullivan on the phone." He heard the muffled sound of the 2 girls talking quietly on the other end before Olivia Sullivan took the phone. "Michael." Her voice was thick with congestion, tinged with grievance. Although Michael Thompson desperately wanted to know what had happened, he kept his tone gentle as he asked Olivia Sullivan, "What's wrong?" "Noth." She seemed intent on hiding it from Michael Thompson, but he knew her too well. After all, they had shared a bed for so long. Olivia Sullivan was always like this. Whenever she felt wronged or troubled, she would try to bear it silently and figure things out on her own. Stubborn in a way that was almost cute, yet strong in a way that tugged at the heartstrings. But Michael Thompson wouldn't allow her to do that. He spoke softly into the phone. "The one person in this world you don't ever need to hide anything from is listening to you right now. You know?" That single sentence shattered Olivia Sullivan's defenses on the other end of the line. "Michael." Olivia sniffled, her voice catching. "Ethan Sullivan. He just came to find me." Without realizing it, she had begun to open her heart completely to Michael Thompson, choosing to rely on this man. Perhaps it was the sense of security he had always given her, or maybe she had already developed an unconditional faith that Michael Thompson could solve anything. Olivia Sullivan didn't hide anything anymore, recounting everything that had just happened to Michael Thompson in meticulous detail. Throughout her explanation, Michael Thompson remained silent, just listening quietly. When Olivia Sullivan finished speaking, she asked nervously, "What should I do? Should I go tell Grandpa?" "There's no need to bother the old man with such a small matter," Michael Thompson said with a smile. I'll handle Ethan Sullivan myself. 3 days should be enough. I guarantee Ethan Sullivan won't bother you again for the rest of his life. But, do you trust me? Yes. Then leave it to me. On the other end, Olivia Sullivan fell silent for a moment. Michael Thompson waited, then suddenly heard a distinct smack sound through the receiver. Olivia Sullivan's slightly shy voice followed. That's for encouragement. Go get him. Michael Thompson paused for a second, then gradually broke into a wide, happy smile. Rewards should really be given in person, you know? All right, it's your birthday today. Don't dwell on these unpleasant things. By the way, have you looked at the gift I sent you? That box. I haven't opened it yet. What's inside? It's a gift I made myself. I guarantee you'll forget all about this unpleasantness once you see it. In that case, you owe me 2 rewards now. Hey, no fair. Olivia Sullivan protested softly. Hearing the liveliness return to her voice, Michael Thompson felt a wave of relief. As soon as the call ended, the smile vanished from his face instantly. Michael Thompson stood still, closing his eyes and rubbing his temples. Had he been acting too agreeable? Why did people always seem to think he was a pushover? Brother-in-law, he thought, I couldn't even be bothered with you, but you just had to walk right into the line of fire. Can't be helped now. Dealing with Ethan Sullivan would be easy. He was just a spoiled, brainless rich kid. There were plenty of ways to teach him a lesson. But this time, he'd have to be harsh. After all, hadn't Olivia been upset enough to cry? When Michael Thompson opened his eyes again, a ruthless glint flickered within them, gone in an instant. He continued walking through the venue with a smile, weaving through the guests before finding a place to sit down. It was as if that flash of coldness had merely been an illusion. Meanwhile, in Olivia Sullivan's room on the 2nd floor, Olivia had just hung up with Michael Thompson. She hugged her phone, smiling sweetly, seemingly still savoring their conversation, until she heard a series of moi, moi, moi sounds beside her. She turned her head to see Claire Evans mimicking her, hugging a phone and puckering her lips to kiss it. Olivia Sullivan flushed, flustered and annoyed, raising a small fist to playfully punch her best friend. Claire Evans dodged her light punch, rubbing her arms and pretending to be disgusted. Are you and Michael Thompson always like this in private? You're so sappy it's giving me goosebumps. I'm not talking to you anymore. Olivia Sullivan turned her head away, feigning anger. Claire Evans put an arm around her, grinning. All right, I won't make our little princess mad. But seriously, Michael Thompson is really something else. You were crying your eyes out just a minute ago, and after just a few words from him, you're beaming. I'm almost afraid that if he ever mistreats you in the future, you'll still end up defending him. Michael Thompson would never mistreat me, Olivia Sullivan said, looking pleased despite herself, but still defending him. After saying that, she looked towards the box on the table, knowing it was the birthday gift Michael Thompson had asked Claire Evans to deliver. Filled with anticipation, she picked it up. Claire Evans leaned in curiously as well. Speaking of which, what on earth did Michael Thompson get you? It's in such a big box. I don't know either. Let's open it and find out, Olivia Sullivan said as she lifted the lid. As the contents of the box were revealed, they caught the light, reflecting a dazzling golden shimmer. This is... Once Claire Evans and Olivia Sullivan got a clear look at what was inside, they were both utterly stunned. Claire, are you done yet? Hang on. The zipper on this back collar is really hidden. You can barely see it unless you look closely. Claire Evans fiddled behind Olivia Sullivan for quite a while, before finally managing to zip it up. The moment Olivia Sullivan turned around, Claire Evans was momentarily lost in a trance. The world reflected in her eyes seemed filled only with gold and red. It was breathtakingly beautiful. Claire? Claire! Olivia Sullivan waved a hand in front of her face and called her name several times before Claire finally snapped back to reality. What were you thinking about? I was wondering. The embroidery on this couldn't possibly be real gold, could it? How else could it shine like that? No way. If it were all gold, imagine how expensive it would be. Olivia Sullivan hadn't even entertained the thought. Pinching the hem of her skirt, she spun around in place, then looked at Claire Evans, blinked playfully, and asked, Do I look good? So good I almost want to rip it off you and put it on myself, Claire Evans thought, a little enviously. If I wore this, I bet everyone here today wouldn't be able to take their eyes off me. Next time it's my birthday, can I borrow it? Normally, Olivia Sullivan would happily share anything with Claire Evans, aside from her boyfriend. But this time, she was uncharacteristically possessive. No way. Michael Thompson made this himself. Michael Thompson made it himself? Claire Evans' eyes nearly bulged out of her head, her voice cracking in astonishment. How is that even possible? Don't underestimate Michael Thompson, Olivia Sullivan said, looking slightly embarrassed yet immensely proud. The boy I like happens to be a genius, you know. Claire Evans still couldn't quite process it. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it, then opened it again, struggling to find the right words. Just then, a knock at the door drew both girls' attention. It was someone reminding Olivia Sullivan that it was time to head downstairs. Claire Evans linked arms with Olivia Sullivan. Let's go, girl. You're the star of the banquet tonight. In the first-floor living room, a simple stage draped in red cloth had been set up. Vanessa Sullivan had just stepped off it, having finished singing one of her biggest hits. The crowd gave her an enthusiastic, polite round of applause. Wherever she went, she was always the center of attention. Vanessa couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. But just as she was about to return to her seat, the applause behind her abruptly died down. Not only that, the previously somewhat noisy environment fell silent, as if someone had hit pause. The entire living room became utterly still. Vanessa noticed that the rich kid who'd been fawning over her the most all evening, who had just stood up and started walking towards her, suddenly froze mid-stride. His eyes were fixed intently on something behind her, and he seemed to have stopped breathing altogether. Behind her, what was there? Confused and uneasy, she glanced back over her shoulder. But with that one look, the pupils in her beautiful eyes contracted to pinpricks. From a second-floor staircase, someone was slowly descending. It was a young woman, not much older than a girl. Her clear, innocent eyes held a constant smile. The corners of her mouth turned up in a heartwarming grin, and a faint, shy blush colored her cheeks. She was almost unfairly beautiful. But what truly riveted everyone's attention was her gown. The base color was a fiery red, embroidered with a magnificent golden phoenix. The phoenix's head rested on the gently swelling bodice. Its body coiled elegantly around the waist. Its spread wings flowed down the voluminous skirt, and its glittering tail feathers reached her knees. As she descended the steps gracefully, the full skirt swayed with her movement, and an incredible sight unfolded. The golden phoenix seemed to come alive. As the skirt rose and fell, its wings appeared to flap, as if it might burst free from the gown, soar into the sky, and roam the heavens. Incredible! Vanessa stared, captivated. No woman could resist a dress like this. It couldn't even be called just a dress. It was a work of art. Vanessa was famous and often attended formal events requiring gowns. She had worn countless dresses of various styles, but none could compare to the one before her now. It wasn't just her. Everyone present was mesmerized. Michael Thompson sat among the crowd, enjoying the sight of the silent, dumbstruck guests, and nodded with satisfaction. He had said he wanted to make Olivia Sullivan the brightest star of the party, and the current effect was even better than he had imagined. Michael Thompson's art wasn't just about blindly blending Eastern and Western styles. It pursued a great beauty that could be appreciated by all tastes. A beauty recognized by everyone, regardless of whether their tastes were refined or simple, regardless of nationality or ethnicity. That was great beauty. In this pursuit, he didn't mind using Western or Eastern elements. As long as they were good, he would incorporate them. This was his artistic ambition, though it existed only in an ideal state. It was basically, or perhaps utterly, impossible for anyone to fully achieve. What he could do was strive to make his works approach this great beauty. It wasn't just about pleasing self-proclaimed connoisseurs. Even an average Joe pulled off the street, looking at this golden phoenix gown, would be stunned and have to say, "Wow, that dress is really something else." That's what universal appeal meant. And this golden phoenix gown was a masterpiece in Michael Thompson's eyes. He couldn't claim it would appeal to everyone in the world, but he could guarantee it would appeal to the vast majority. The present situation proved it. As the center of attention, Olivia Sullivan's current mood could be described in one word: overwhelmed. Although she knew the gift Michael Thompson had given her was incredibly special, the crowd's reaction unnerved her slightly. She'd never been stared at by so many people before. Olivia inevitably felt nervous, but when she scanned the crowd and saw Michael sitting in a corner, smiling at her, her anxiety began to subside. However, her parents were also here, so she couldn't focus too much attention on Michael. She could only make a small gesture, giving a little wave in his direction with a hand resting near her stomach. Michael noticed her small movement, suddenly stood up, and began to clap. Clap, clap, clap. His applause broke the spell, and the surrounding people, as if waking from a dream, also began to clap. In an instant, thunderous applause filled the hall, even louder than the ovation after Vanessa Sullivan's performance. A certain pop diva, momentarily forgotten, was dumbfounded. Are you people serious? She thought. She just walked down the stairs. She didn't do anything. What's all the clapping for? Vanessa felt a pang of jealousy. Looking at the gown on Olivia Sullivan, she grew envious. No, I have to find out where she bought that dress, she resolved. I have to get one too. Undoubtedly, Olivia Sullivan became the undisputed star of the party today. Although it was her birthday gala, in previous years, she had merely made an appearance. The important figures invited by the Sullivan family would offer polite applause, perhaps say happy birthday at most, and then immediately start chatting amongst themselves, usually about business. But today, Olivia was like the moon surrounded by stars. Everywhere she went, a crowd gathered around her. She couldn't even find an opportunity to talk to Michael. She simply couldn't break away. Finally, Arthur Sullivan couldn't stand it anymore and brought Olivia to his side, rescuing her from the throng. It was quieter now, but standing next to her grandfather, Olivia didn't dare say she wanted to find Michael. Still, her gaze couldn't help but drift towards him. Arthur Sullivan, perceptive as he was, had long noticed his granddaughter's glances, intentional or not, towards Michael. He had known for a while how his granddaughter felt about the young man. Seeing her practically pining for him now, he couldn't watch any longer and instructed someone to call Michael over. When Michael came over, he first greeted Arthur Sullivan. "Mr. Sullivan, you were looking for me?" After the greeting, he turned to Olivia Sullivan with a smile. "Little birthday girl, I made good on my promise about the dress. Do you like your birthday gala gift?" Olivia liked it so much she wanted to kiss Michael right then and there. But with her grandfather present, she could only lower her head shyly and nod. "MHM." Hearing Michael's words, Arthur Sullivan let out a soft sound of surprise. "You bought this dress for Olivia?" Olivia quickly interjected. "Grandpa, Michael made this for me himself." "Made himself?" Arthur Sullivan was utterly astonished, his eyes wide. "You know how to do that?" Michael replied modestly. "I know a little. A man learning to make clothes?" "Sir, if you talk like that, we can't have this conversation. We promote gender equality now." Michael's expression darkened. Arthur Sullivan realized his mistake and laughed heartily. "That's not what I meant." He continued with a smile. "In the early days, everyone bought fabric to make clothes, and most tailor shops on the street were run by men. When I was young, just after leaving my hometown, I also apprenticed at a tailor shop. But for various reasons, after working for free for a year, I ran off." Michael asked curiously what reasons. Arthur Sullivan said meaningfully, mainly because it didn't pay enough. Michael, wow, talk about a brutally honest reason. But it was the truth. In his younger days, Arthur Sullivan was dead set on making money. Daring enough to be a wheeler-dealer back then meant risking life and limb for profit. Arthur Sullivan studied the gown Olivia Sullivan was wearing for a moment, then reached out to touch the sheer fabric of the skirt. "I never knew gold embroidery could be done like this," he marveled. "On such delicate gauze, this phoenix spreading its wings. Did you calculate every single fold of the skirt into the design?" Michael Thompson offered a flattering remark. "You've certainly seen your share of things, Mr. Sullivan." Arthur Sullivan shook his head, sighing with feeling. "Seeing you makes me realize that even when you're old and think you've seen enough, the world can still show you something completely new. You kid, you're something else entirely." His unintentional remark made Olivia Sullivan, standing nearby, absolutely beam. Hearing her grandfather praise Michael Thompson made Olivia even happier than if he had praised her directly. It was also thanks to Arthur Sullivan that Michael Thompson got a chance to spend some time with Olivia Sullivan. However, Claire Evans was still stuck to Olivia's side. Claire Evans was chattering excitedly and non-stop to Olivia about everything that had happened at the party just moments before. This left Michael feeling rather neglected. He looked at Claire Evans, the woman currently monopolizing his future girlfriend, and mentally schemed about finding someone to snatch her away quickly. Otherwise, what was the deal with her constantly stealing Olivia's time? But once the birthday gala ended, Olivia Sullivan personally walked Michael Thompson out, giving the two a chance to finally be alone. Olivia had changed back in her everyday clothes. Hands clasped behind her back, she walked ahead of Michael, head down, childishly hopping forward by stepping only on tiles of the same color on the sidewalk. They walked quite a distance before Michael finally asked with a smile, "I thought you'd ask me what I plan to do about Ethan Sullivan." Olivia stopped and turned back to look at him. "Do you want me to ask?" "No, don't dwell on unhappy things. Just leave it to me. Trust me," Michael said without hesitation. "Today and always." Olivia gave him a sweet smile. "Okay." She suddenly spun around to face him directly, biting her lip shyly. After the Ethan Sullivan thing is settled, Do you want to go somewhere? Just hang out. Don't you have SAT prep class? It's okay to skip a day or two. Occasionally. Michael deadpanned, no way. What if you don't get into an Ivy League university and then refuse to date me? Olivia raised a small fist at him playfully, pouting. Don't jinx it. Michael rubbed his chin, looking troubled, then looked at Olivia. Well then, Olivia, while you're repeating your year, can I find a girlfriend in the meantime? Seriously, I've never actually dated anyone before. Michael Thompson. I'm kidding. Wait. Ow. Why are you biting me? Let go. I promise I'll never date anyone besides Olivia for the rest of my life. Okay? Let go. The Sullivan family's party started at noon and ended by 6 in the evening. So, it was still early when Michael Thompson left Green Valley. Since he took a Sullivan family car back, he arrived in Pine Ridge County just after 7 p.m. Once home, Michael shut himself in his room and started formulating a plan to deal with Ethan Sullivan. Dealing with Ethan wasn't difficult, but doing it permanently without excessively provoking the Sullivan family, especially Ethan's branch of the family, required careful thought. Michael thought for a long time until a plan finally formed in his mind. But executing it required money. He had over 100,000 yuan on hand, but it wasn't quite enough. Michael considered going stone gambling again, but he had promised Olivia Sullivan he wouldn't do that anymore, which put him in a difficult position. I'll just have to do it one more time without Olivia knowing. Weighing the options, Michael decided that eliminating the threat of Ethan Sullivan was the priority. No sooner said than done. He'd buy a train ticket to Springfield tomorrow. He needed a big score this time, so he couldn't do it nearby where his family might find out. Springfield was the biggest source of chicken bloodstone, and Robert Thompson always attended the public auctions at the Springfield mines. Michael had been there before, so it wasn't unfamiliar territory. The only issue was that Springfield was near Qiantang City, the provincial capital of Jiang Province, quite far from Green Valley. In 2009, Green Valley didn't have high-speed rail yet, so you still had to queue at the station for train tickets. The round trip would likely take 2 days, which was a problem. Still, the remaining day should be enough to handle Ethan Sullivan. Just as Michael was about to set off for Springfield, something unexpected happened that saved him a trip. But before Michael could even leave for Springfield, things changed again. Simply put, the money came to him. The day after the birthday gala, the wealthy women who had attended the Sullivan's party somehow found out that the stunning Phoenix gold embroidery gown that had stolen the show was his creation. He had no idea how his phone number leaked, but starting early that morning, his phone hadn't stopped buzzing with calls and messages. Without exception, these wealthy women all wanted custom gowns made. And without exception, they were either rich themselves or had rich husbands. In short, money was no object. If this had happened the day before, Michael wouldn't have bothered responding and would have just blocked them all. But things were different now. He needed money. It was like a pillow appearing just when he felt sleepy. One woman was the most direct. After calling Michael, she arranged to meet him in person, summoning him to the only combination coffee shop, bistro, and card room in Pine Creek Town. A couple of years ago, when bistros were trendy, several had opened in town. But a small town wasn't like a big city. The population was limited, and the locals weren't the type of sophisticated white-collar workers who frequented bistros. Hardly anyone ate there. So, this was the only bistro-linked establishment left, surviving only by wearing multiple hats. Rumor had it that the cover charges and the house cut from the card room made up the bulk of its income. Michael arrived at the coffee shop and found the woman who had specifically asked to see him in a booth in the main downstairs area. She was a young woman, wearing large sunglasses even indoors, with an assistant-like woman beside her. When Michael arrived, the woman slid her sunglasses down slightly, looking him up and down with disbelief. "Yep, you're Michael Thompson." Michael reached into his jacket. "Want to see my student ID?" "Yes, let's see it." "Didn't bring it." The woman's expression darkened slightly. She then asked, "You were at the Sullivan family party yesterday, right? I saw you. Did you really make that gown?" Michael smiled slightly, reminding her, "It's generally considered polite to introduce yourself before asking someone so many questions, wouldn't you say?" The woman considered this, then took off her sunglasses, revealing a beautiful, somewhat captivating face. "You should recognize me, right?" Michael paused for a second when he saw her face. He hadn't expected the person calling him out today to be the famous actress Vanessa Sullivan. Of course, he recognized Vanessa Sullivan. He wasn't living under a rock. He watched TV and had some impression of the most active faces on screen. Besides, Vanessa Sullivan had been there yesterday and had even performed on stage. It was hard not to notice her. But Michael's surprise was fleeting. He quickly regained his composure and nodded. "I made the gown. Since you got the information from the Sullivan family, you should know it's true." Vanessa Sullivan still looked skeptical. Michael was much younger than she had imagined. Was this reliable? Seeing her disbelief, Michael Thompson took out his phone, opened his contacts, tapped the number, dialed, and then put on speakerphone, placing the phone on the table. After a few rings, Olivia Sullivan's cheerful voice came through. "Michael Thompson, why are you calling me so soon?" Vanessa Sullivan was quite surprised. She recognized the voice of the young lady from the Sullivan family from yesterday. Olivia Sullivan's voice was distinctive, with a very childlike quality that made it quite recognizable. Michael Thompson spoke into the phone. "It's nothing, I just wanted to ask if you wore the gown I gave you yesterday today." "Of course not. Even if I love it, I can't wear it every day. You gave it to me, so from now on, I'll only wear it for the most important occasions." "Then don't gain any weight. It's form-fitting and hard to alter. You're the one who'll get fat." After chatting for a few more sentences, Michael Thompson and Olivia Sullivan said their goodbyes, and he hung up. He looked at Vanessa Sullivan and asked, "Is that proof enough?" Vanessa Sullivan asked curiously, "Are you two close? You and the Sullivan girl?" Michael Thompson refused to answer. "Let's put personal questions aside for now and talk business." "You don't talk like a high school student. Our kids these days all so mature." "Yeah, Aunt Maggie, you're behind the times. So can we talk business now?" "Hey, Aunt Maggie." Vanessa Sullivan was so angry a vein nearly popped on her forehead. She was only 25. How did she become Aunt Maggie? But, after all, she was the one asking for a favor. She swallowed her anger after a long moment and asked, "All right, let's get straight to it. I want you to design a custom gown for me, a style you can't find anywhere else. It has to be better than the gown from yesterday. My creations are all one of a kind." Michael Thompson explained, "But whether it can surpass the Phoenix brocade, I can't guarantee. Creation requires inspiration. Can it be better than this one?" Vanessa Sullivan pulled out her phone and showed him a picture of a black sleeveless evening gown. Michael Thompson glanced at it and scoffed. Piling on expensive embellishments doesn't make a gown well designed. Vanessa Sullivan couldn't help but retort. "This was designed by a famous Italian designer. And yet, you still came to me, didn't you?" Michael Thompson's remark left Vanessa Sullivan speechless. It was true. She felt that this celebrated piece by the famous Italian designer couldn't compare to yesterday's stunning Phoenix brocade. Otherwise, she wouldn't have specifically stayed an extra day in Green Valley, nor come all the way to a small town like this to meet Michael Thompson in person. Vanessa Sullivan said, "So, how much do you charge for a gown? And how long will it take?" Michael Thompson held up one hand, showing 5 fingers. 50,000. 500,000. Cash. Up front. Vanessa Sullivan snapped. "Are you crazy? 500,000? Why don't you just rob Bank of America?" "Would robbing Bank of America be faster than this?" "You're not even a famous designer." Michael Thompson sneered. "If I had some fame, it wouldn't be 500,000. You'd have to add another zero to that. Besides," he paused, looking at Vanessa Sullivan before continuing, "do you think I'll stay unknown forever? I just turned 18 a few days ago, and I can already create pieces like the Phoenix brocade. Right now, you're buying a gown for 500,000. In 5 years, look at the gown you bought back then and see if its value hasn't gained an extra zero." Vanessa Sullivan couldn't help saying, "It's just a gown. It will depreciate in 5 years." Michael Thompson scoffed. Consumables depreciate. Art doesn't. He had that confidence because he had already reached that level. Vanessa Sullivan badly wanted to turn around and leave. But then she thought of the Phoenix brocade. She gritted her teeth and said, "There's no way I'm paying cash up front. What if you take the money and run? The most I'll pay is a 20% deposit. Then there's nothing to discuss?" Should have said so earlier. Michael Thompson simply couldn't be bothered to negotiate and stood up to leave. He didn't necessarily need Vanessa Sullivan's business anyway. There were plenty of wealthy women. Landing just one client would be enough. He just needed money urgently. Enough was enough, so he was only taking one commission. Vanessa Sullivan had thought Michael Thompson was just playing hard to get, but when she saw him walk out of the coffee shop without a backward glance, she realized he wasn't joking and panicked, quickly having her assistant call him back. After Michael Thompson returned, Vanessa Sullivan glared at him, grinding her teeth for a moment before saying, "Then give me a written agreement." 500,000 wasn't actually that much to her, but Michael Thompson was so young, and demanding cash up front made her uneasy, giving off the impression he might skip town. But in the end, she gritted her teeth, steeled herself, and decided to agree. If she got scammed, she got scammed. Anyway, she had the written agreement, and Michael Thompson's family lived right here. If he took the money and ran, he couldn't hide forever. She wouldn't hesitate to send a lawyer's letter. Worst case, she'd just write off the 500,000. Michael Thompson quickly wrote out an agreement and handed it to Vanessa Sullivan. She didn't even look at it, just passed it to her assistant beside her and asked irritably, "How long will it take?" 3 to 6 months, probably. That long. I'm still a student, I have school, and creativity needs inspiration. Vanessa Sullivan had to admit Michael Thompson had a point, so she agreed. Of course, if she knew it only took Michael Thompson a little over half a month to make the Phoenix brocade, and now he was telling her this would take so long, she'd probably want to strangle him. After taking Vanessa Sullivan's measurements, Michael Thompson rode in her car to the main town in the county. He wanted cash, and withdrawing that much from the Bank of America branch in their small town was a hassle. Going to the branch in the county seat would be easier. When Michael Thompson came out of the bank, he was carrying a briefcase. Before leaving, Vanessa Sullivan insisted on getting Michael Thompson's contact information and demanded that he send her photos of the progress, so she could request changes anytime if she wasn't satisfied. Michael Thompson agreed outwardly, but inwardly planned to block this fussy client later. "Right, do me a favor," Michael Thompson said to Vanessa Sullivan. Vanessa Sullivan asked, puzzled, "What favor? Are you connected with Hollywood studios? I need to borrow some movie props," Michael Thompson said. "Also, I need contact information for some media people and heads of online promotion networks. Your PR team should have those contacts, right?" Vanessa Sullivan frowned. "What are you planning? That's none of your business. If you don't tell me, I won't give them to you." Michael Thompson didn't speak, just held the briefcase out towards her. Vanessa Sullivan stomped her foot angrily and said, all right, I'll text them to you in a bit." "Thanks." That thanks didn't sound sincere at all. Vanessa Sullivan grumbled. Then she and her assistant got into the car and parted ways with Michael Thompson. Less than half an hour later, Michael Thompson received a text message from Vanessa Sullivan. The contacts he wanted from media people and heads of online promotion networks had arrived. Regarding the movie props, Vanessa Sullivan added a question. "What props do you need to borrow?" "Nothing too valuable. You'll have to buy those yourself. A lot of props for the film studios over in Hollywood studios are made by factories here in Green Valley. I'll send you the factory addresses and contact info." After reading the message, Michael Thompson replied, "Got it," then walked over to a nearby hardware store. The store's phone number was printed on the glass door. Michael Thompson noted the number down on his phone and then went to a payphone nearby. Hardly anyone used payphones anymore, but Michael Thompson had used them often back in high school. He didn't have a cell phone, and there were phone booths on campus, so sometimes he'd use one to call home. He picked up the receiver, inserted a coin, and dialed the number he'd just written down. The line quickly started ringing on the other end. Michael Thompson turned slightly, watching the hardware store across the street. He could see the owner walking towards the ringing landline phone. A moment later, a middle-aged man's voice, tinged with a northern accent, answered, "Hello?" Michael Thompson said politely, "Sir, I'm looking for Travis." "All right, hold on." Muffled cursing came through the receiver, quickly replaced by a young man's voice. He sounded like he'd just been woken up, thick with annoyance. "Who is it?" Michael Thompson glanced again at the hardware store and saw a young man with bleached blonde hair, dressed in padded winter clothes, answering the phone inside. Speaking into the receiver, he chuckled, "Travis Wilson, having fun hanging out with Ethan Sullivan? Do you know how your sister died?" The line went dead silent. In his past life, Michael Thompson had gone after the Sullivan family ruthlessly, digging up dirt on every single one of them. His first breakthrough had been with his brother-in-law, Ethan Sullivan. Ethan Sullivan couldn't stand up to scrutiny either. He'd done plenty of messed up things and even had a murder on his hands. When he was 18, he'd forced himself on a girl, ultimately leading to her death. Ironically, the girl hadn't died immediately. The police eventually determined the cause of death was drowning. It happened out at Northwood Reservoir in Green Valley. It was a large reservoir, and the people who originally lived there had been relocated elsewhere in Green Valley when it was built, leaving the area mostly deserted. However, near Northwood Reservoir, there was a mountain peak with winding but wide roads, often used by the local rich kids as a place for street racing. That's where Ethan Sullivan had committed the crime. Panicked, thinking he'd actually killed her, he tied rocks to her body and sunk her in the reservoir. If Michael Thompson hadn't intervened, her body would only have been discovered years later when the reservoir was drained for fishing. But at the time, the investigation hadn't pointed to Ethan Sullivan. Whether it was because too much time had passed or the Sullivan family had pulled some strings, her death was ultimately ruled an accidental drowning. But Michael Thompson wasn't a cop. He didn't play by the rules of evidence. While investigating Ethan Sullivan, he uncovered this incident, connecting the dead girl to Ethan, and learning that Ethan, who loved racing at Northwood Reservoir, had suddenly stopped going there around the same time the girl disappeared. It was hard not to suspect him. So he used some unconventional tactics, setting a trap for Ethan Sullivan and extracting the truth from the man himself, successfully putting him behind bars. It was during this process that he met the dead girl's brother, Travis Wilson. Travis Wilson wasn't exactly a saint either, a loan shark who hung around Ethan Sullivan, acting as his lackey to get perks from the rich kid. But even a lowlife like him deeply loved his sister. After discovering Ethan Sullivan was his sister's killer, Travis Wilson had snapped, stabbing Ethan and nearly killing him, which landed Travis in prison too. But if it weren't for him, his sister might never have met Ethan Sullivan, and none of this might have happened. Inside the hardware store, Travis Wilson gripped the receiver, his heart plunging into an icy abyss. His sister, dead? His sister had disappeared 2 years ago. The family had reported it to the police long ago, but the search had yielded nothing. Travis Wilson had always assumed his sister couldn't stand being home and had run off to work in another province. He never expected someone to call him today with news of her death. He stood stunned for a long moment, then exploded into the receiver. What the hell are you talking about? 2 years ago, you took your sister to the Golden Impression karaoke downtown, and that's where she met Ethan Sullivan, right? The day your sister disappeared, didn't Ethan Sullivan, who was supposed to meet you guys, bail on you at the last minute? The voice on the line paused, then asked, "Need I go on?" Travis Wilson was dumbfounded. "You? How do you know all this?" He had no idea he himself had told Michael Thompson these things. The voice didn't answer, instead asking, "Well, am I right? Why don't you verify it yourself?" "How?" "Ask Ethan Sullivan to meet you. Don't tell him where you're going. Just take him to Northwood Reservoir, to that mountain where you guys race. Before you go, head to the first tree under the Cross River Bridge. Dig down. I've got something for you there. Why should I listen to you? Listen or don't. It's up to you. But what do you have to lose by doing it? Don't you want to know what happened to your sister?" Travis Wilson couldn't help asking, "Who the hell are you? Why are you helping me?" Clearly, the caller wasn't going to answer. Travis Wilson was silent for a moment, then asked, "How do I contact you?" "Don't even think about contacting me. Give me your cell number. I'll contact you when necessary." Emerging from the payphone booth, Michael Thompson saw the blonde kid inside the hardware store, still holding the receiver, looking completely devastated. He knew Travis Wilson would do exactly as he'd said. From the very beginning, Michael Thompson had held Ethan Sullivan's fatal vulnerability firmly in his grasp. That's why he'd never worried about Ethan. He could crush him at any time. But he hadn't originally planned to act so soon. Because in his current situation, being discovered by the Sullivan family would cause significant trouble. In this life, Old Man Sullivan was still alive. He was a reasonable elder, and Michael Thompson had a decent impression of him, though they hadn't interacted much. If the old man found out Michael was the one who sent his grandson to prison, Michael couldn't predict how he'd react. Michael Thompson had intended to play the long game, use a gentler approach, aiming to neutralize Ethan Sullivan while keeping himself out of it. But well, whatever. Ultimately, he was getting rid of a menace. That was a good thing too. The moment things involve little Olivia, all plans go out the window. Can't help it, gotta dote on the wife. Michael Thompson shrugged and walked away. That night, Travis Wilson went to the Cross River Bridge as instructed. Under the first tree, he dug with a shovel and soon unearthed a large, bulging object wrapped in a black plastic bag. Opening it, he found a voice recorder and a pinhole camera. Besides those, there was also a dismantled human skeleton. The moment Travis Wilson saw the skull, he staggered back in terror and fell, landing hard on his backside. Just then his phone rang. It was an unknown number. Trembling, he answered the phone. The voice from the man he'd spoken to at noon came through. "Don't be scared. It's fake." Travis Wilson whipped his head around. "Are you watching me? What are you talking about? See the camera in the bag? It's on. I can see you. What'd I do next?" "Get Ethan Sullivan to meet you. The Sullivan family thinks he's leaving the country at the end of the month, so they aren't watching him as closely. You should be able to get him out. What reason should I use? And what do I do when we meet? Invite him out for bourbon. Get a couple of bottles into him. Once he's drunk, tell him you'll take him home. When you get to Northwood Reservoir." The voice on the phone lowered, coaching him on what to say. Travis Wilson listened, his brow twitching. "Will this actually work? How about you try it and find out? There's $50,000 in the bag I gave you. It's up to you, but make sure Ethan Sullivan is dead drunk, understand? If you're tricking me, I'll piss off the Sullivan family. That won't end well for me. Like I said, it's up to you whether you do it or not. Or you could just take the $50,000 and run. I won't come after you." Hearing the indifferent tone, Travis Wilson gritted his teeth and hung up. He felt completely led by the nose, but he had no choice but to go along. He couldn't let go of his missing sister. He needed to know the truth. It made him feel like his own desperation was being expertly manipulated. Huff, huff. Travis Wilson sat on the ground, took a few deep breaths to calm himself, then pulled out his phone again and called Ethan Sullivan. The moment the call connected, his face broke into a wide smile. Hey, Ethan, want to grab some bourbon tonight? Huh? No way, man. You always pay. It's my treat tonight. I'm not rolling in it like you, so don't mind if it's not the fanciest place, all right? On the Cross River Bridge, Michael Thompson leaned against the railing, watching Travis Wilson sitting on the ground, making the call below. Satisfied, he looked away. Now, it wasn't just Travis Wilson who needed to act. He had to get moving too. He also needed to go to Northwood Reservoir. But just as he was about to get into a taxi, Michael Thompson remembered something. That time he got hauled into the station for driving without a license and had to write a self-criticism. They won't get pulled over for drunk driving, will they? Meanwhile, Ethan Sullivan was quite surprised to get Travis Wilson's call. He never thought his little brother would actually offer to buy him bourbon. Lately, although the Sullivan family had eased up on grounding Ethan, he hadn't been going out much anyway because he was broke. His family had cut off his cards. He was going stir-crazy, so the moment he heard Travis offer to buy him bourbon, he immediately agreed. That night, Ethan Sullivan drank heartily. Travis barely had a try. Ethan got himself completely wasted all on his own. As Travis Wilson helped the staggering Ethan Sullivan into his car, he felt a knot of anxiety. Ethan, I'll take you home. Ethan mumbled incoherently from the passenger seat, then his head lolled to the side, and he passed out. Travis Wilson's palms were sweating nervously. His hands trembled as he fumbled with the key, finally managing to start the car after several tries. Gripping the steering wheel tightly, he headed out of the city. Luckily, Michael Thompson's fears didn't materialize. Travis Wilson drove smoothly to the deserted Northwood Reservoir without incident. After entering the mountain area, Travis Wilson gradually slowed down, muttering to himself, "Second turn, second turn." Just before reaching the second turn, he stopped the car, got out, and switched places with Ethan Sullivan, putting the unconscious man in the driver's seat. Back in the passenger seat, Travis Wilson reached over to grab the steering wheel. Gritting his teeth, he stretched his foot across and slammed on the gas pedal. Crash! The front of the car seemed to hit something, making a loud noise. Bang! The loud noise instantly snapped the deeply intoxicated Ethan Sullivan sober. The car had stopped. In the passenger seat beside him, Travis Wilson had one hand gripping the steering wheel, the other foot jammed on the brake, his face pale and filled with terror as he stared at Ethan. Ethan looked around, alarmed and confused. What happened? What's going on? Only then did he realize he was in the driver's seat, his hands pinned to the steering wheel by Travis's tight grip. Ethan, Ethan, Travis said, his voice trembling on the verge of tears. You were drunk coming out of the KTV and insisted on driving. But there was someone up ahead, and you just drove right into them. Me? I was driving. Ethan drew a blank. He'd been so drunk he couldn't remember anything. But now that he was sober, he was indeed in the driver's seat, gripping the wheel, while Travis, desperately grabbing the wheel and hitting the brakes, looked like he was trying to stop him. If it weren't for Travis, they might have smashed through the guardrail on that curve and plunged straight into Northwood Reservoir. Even now, Ethan's mind was still foggy. Hearing he'd hit someone made his head spin even more, leaving him unable to think straight. Forcing himself to look calm, he lit a cigarette and said to Travis, "Get out and check." "How are they?" Travis said miserably, "They have to be dead. The car ran right over them." Ethan also recalled the feeling of the car running over something, and his mind grew even more chaotic. He grabbed Travis Wilson viciously by the collar. "I said, get out and look." Travis looked terrified, but under Ethan's pressure, he finally gritted his teeth and got out of the car. Ethan couldn't sit still either and followed him out. But when he got out, he froze. This is Northwood Reservoir. Memories he tried to suppress surged back, filling him with dread. How could he have driven here? His mind was reeling. Ethan lit another cigarette with trembling hands. Just then, he heard the sound of vomiting from behind him. He turned to see two bloody tracks snaking across the road behind the car from the tires. In the dim light, a mangled figure lay indistinctly on the ground, guts spilled everywhere. Just one glance, without even seeing clearly, was enough to make Ethan's stomach churn violently. He collapsed by the roadside ditch, vomiting uncontrollably. Wretch! He threw up, and so did Travis. After a while, Travis's crying voice came through. "Ethan, come quick, look, they're dead." "Fuck you. You think I don't know they're dead?" Ethan roared, furious. Extreme fear often manifests as anger, and he didn't dare look at the bloody mess. He collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. He tried to light another cigarette, but his hands trembled uncontrollably. Finally, he angrily slammed the lighter onto the ground. Damn it, Travis kept asking anxiously. Ethan, what do we do now? They're dead. A car could come by any second. Can you shut the fuck up? Ethan snapped irritably, but he knew Travis was right. They had to deal with this quickly. Although few people came out to Northwood Reservoir, you never knew if some idiot might decide to go drag racing out here late at night looking for thrills. He said impatiently to Travis, "Is there a sack in the car? Put it in the sack, weigh it down with rocks, and dump it in the reservoir." Travis was petrified, suddenly stammering, "Ethan, you want to destroy the evidence. What else? You want the cops to arrest me. But you hit them. What the hell did you just say? Listen, I already killed one person tonight. Believe me, I wouldn't mind making it two." His words scared Travis into silence. Ethan composed himself slightly and said with a dark expression, "Just do what I say, and I'll give you $10. The offer seemed to sway Travis Wilson, but he still hesitated. "But Ethan, what if the police find out?" Ethan tried persuading him further, but Travis kept wavering, unable to bring himself to agree. Finally, Ethan lost his patience. "The police won't find out. I killed someone 2 years ago, dumped the body in this reservoir, and nobody's found out yet. What the hell are you afraid of?" Travis gasped. "Ethan, you killed someone? Right here in Northwood Reservoir." Ethan now saw Travis as an accomplice, wanting to reassure him. He didn't deny it. This reservoir is hundreds of feet deep, weighed down with rocks. Who's going to find it? In a couple of years, the fish will eat everything clean. Not even God himself could find me. Travis, who had been squatting on the ground, slowly stood up. The moment he rose, the fear seemed to vanish from him completely. "Ethan, speaking of which, my sister went missing 2 years ago." His voice turned cold, laced with a chilling, teeth-grinding hatred. Ethan was instantly shocked, a cold dread creeping in. Why was Travis bringing this up now? Could he already know? No, impossible. Forcing calm into his voice, Ethan said, "What does that have to do with me?" Travis continued, "A couple of days ago, the police suddenly came to my house. They told me they found my sister's remains. Do you know where they found them?" He pointed past the mountain road towards the reservoir. "Right here, in Northwood Reservoir. Just like you said, after only 2 years, the fish in this reservoir picked her bones clean. And today, I brought her with me." Each word sent a chill down Ethan's spine, and cold sweat beaded on his forehead. He instinctively tried to back away, but Travis had already opened the trunk, pulled something out, and tossed it towards Ethan. It landed squarely in Ethan's arms. Ethan looked down. The empty eye sockets of a skull stared right at him, as if in silent accusation. "Oh!" A terrified scream erupted. Ethan threw the skull away and scrambled backward on all fours. He stared at Travis Wilson, still reeling from the shock. Travis was now pulling a sharp dagger from the trunk and walking towards him, step by step. "Ethan, my sister actually quite liked you. Why did you have to kill her?" I didn't." Ethan tried to deny it. But as Travis got closer, he seemingly didn't notice the skull he'd just thrown lying near his feet. In the dim light of the road, he tripped and stumbled. Ethan seized the opportunity, suddenly lunged, and tackled Travis Wilson to the ground. As they struggled, Ethan kept Travis pinned beneath him, desperately wrestling the dagger from his hand. Holding the dagger, he sneered, "Not so tough now, are you, bastard? Your sister was a piece of trash, too, acting all innocent. You want to know how your sister died? I'll tell you, I fucked her death." Travis's eyes instantly turned bloodshot, veins bulging on his neck. "You really killed my sister? So what if I did? You gonna report me? You think I'm gonna let you leave here today?" Ethan, believing he had the upper hand, grinned terrifyingly. "Let me tell you, you're going to die here today, too. After I kill you, I'll hire the best lawyers to handle my case. Believe me, even if I kill you, it'll be self-defense. You were driving. You hit the person. You tried to kill me to silence me, but I killed you instead. Know why? Because I have money. Lots and lots of money. Rest in peace. You can keep your dead sister company." As he spoke, he lunged forward viciously, plunging the dagger towards Travis Wilson's chest. For the next second, Ethan froze. The squish of a blade entering flesh he expected never came, nor was there any blood. He looked down in disbelief to see that the moment the knife hit Travis, the blade had retracted into the hilt. Ethan was completely stunned. Travis grinned at the bewildered Ethan Sullivan, pushed himself up, and easily threw Ethan, who was on top of him, to the ground. The knife fell too, but was quickly picked up again. Travis held the handle between 2 fingers of his right hand, pressed the tip inward with his left index finger, and said to Ethan, It's fake. Ethan remained stunned for a long moment, but then realization dawned. You set me up. He lunged at Travis again. He knew Travis must have planned this setup thoroughly. If his earlier words had been recorded, fear gripped Ethan. If this got out, his life was over. Get lost. Travis kicked Ethan hard, sending him sprawling. In a real fight, how could a pampered rich boy like Ethan possibly beat Travis Wilson, who'd grown up on the streets? Travis ignored Ethan groaning on the ground and got into the car without a backward glance. Soon, the engine started and the car drove down the mountain, leaving Ethan behind. Ethan lay on the ground for a long moment before recovering. He looked again at the supposed corpse he had hit. His face turned pale. What corpse? It was clearly a mannequin. Getting closer, he saw the blood on the ground smelled faintly of tomatoes and the spilled guts, while real intestines reeked of pig. You could probably wash them off at home and braise them. Suddenly, Ethan felt utter despair. He knelt weakly on the ground, feeling like his whole world had collapsed. After Travis Wilson drove the car down the mountain, he pulled over to the side of the road, leaned against the car, and cried for a long time. He didn't stop until his phone rang. Knowing who it was, he wiped his tears and answered. It was the same person. Did you record everything? Yeah. Good work. Put the devices back in the designated spot. The job's done. Got it. Same time, same place tomorrow. I have something else for you. Can't we just hand this over to the police now? It's not that simple. If we hand over the current evidence, they might still overturn it. Don't underestimate the Sullivan family. Besides, would that really satisfy you? After you get the stuff tomorrow, you should lie low somewhere else for a while. Follow the instructions on it. The Sullivan family might come looking for you. I know, I'm not stupid. Without realizing it, Travis Wilson had started following the caller's instructions without question. He didn't even know who the person was. The voice was strange, clearly disguised. Yet the caller seemed to know everything, see everything, have everything under control. Even Ethan Sullivan's reactions tonight had been almost exactly as the caller predicted, which sent a shiver down Travis's spine. At the same time, Travis felt a surge of gratitude. If it weren't for this person, he might still be in the dark, working as a lackey for his sister's murderer. He knew he was being used, but he was willing. As instructed, Travis Wilson buried the recording pen, camera, and other devices under the first tree on the embankment beneath the Green Valley Bridge. But curiosity gnawed at him. Who was this caller? After burying the items, he snuck into some nearby bushes to watch. After a long wait, a figure approached the tree and knelt, appearing to dig. Travis immediately emerged, only to find it was an old homeless man. What you doing? What you doing? The old scavenger clutched his sack and looked terrified as Travis grabbed his collar. Travis realized something was wrong. Who told you dig here? Dunno. Some lady told me to come here. The old man answered nervously in a thick, out-of-town accent. Travis could barely understand his broken Mandarin. After asking several times, he finally grasped the old man's meaning. A woman in her 40s or 50s had paid him $100 to dig up whatever was under the tree. But that was clearly wrong. The person who called Travis was a man. The voice was processed, making the age hard to tell, but he could at least tell it was a man's voice. As Travis puzzled over this, his phone rang again. When he answered, the voice on the other end said only one thing. Travis Wilson, ever heard the saying curiosity killed a cat? Then the line went dead. A chill went through Travis. He looked around but saw no one suspicious. He didn't dare pursue it further. After letting the old man take the package, he hurriedly left. Not long after Travis left, someone else arrived at the tree. This time, it was indeed Michael Thompson. Knew the kid wouldn't just leave it. Michael Thompson chuckled. He knelt and started digging. Soon, he unearthed another bag. He had buried a decoy bag beforehand, filled with some food, on the side closer to the river. The old man had taken that one. Consider it charity. Travis Wilson had buried his bag on the side closer to the embankment. Michael wasn't worried about Travis returning. Worst case, he could just say someone paid him $200 to dig here. He quickly dug up the bag Travis had buried, opened it, checked the contents, confirmed everything was there, and tucked it in his own bag, satisfied, before leaving. The next day, Michael Thompson went to Green Valley again, burying a bag in the usual spot. Luckily, his family was busy dealing with mining permits these days, running around everywhere and rarely home. Otherwise, Michael being out all day would definitely have earned him nagging from his family. The bag he prepared this time was quite large. He managed to dig a hole and bury it when no one was around. Just as he was about to leave with his small shovel, Olivia Sullivan called him. Michael Thompson, do you know some kind of magic? On the other end, Olivia Sullivan sounded ecstatic, her voice filled with surprised delight. Michael Thompson wiped the dirt from his hands, cradling his phone between his shoulder and ear. "What's up?" he asked. "It's Ethan Sullivan. He's like a completely different person all of a sudden, just locks himself in his room all day. I heard from the housekeeper that when she went to clean his room, he was wrapped in a blanket, trembling on the windowsill like he was possessed or something. It's black magic. I put a curse on him." "Be serious. What did you really do?" Olivia Sullivan didn't believe in ghosts or curses, of course, but she was genuinely curious. Michael Thompson chuckled. "I didn't do anything." "Really?" Disbelief dripped from her voice. "Of course it's true. I wish I were there with you, so I could tell if you're actually telling the truth." Michael Thompson found this amusing. "What? You think you can tell if I'm lying just by being near me? That's a pretty limited superpower you've got there. Maybe you should learn black magic from me instead." Olivia Sullivan didn't know whether to be annoyed or amused. "But really, I didn't do anything," Michael Thompson insisted. He really hadn't done anything himself, aside from giving things a tiny nudge in the right direction. The actual work was done by some blonde kid named Zhao. What did that have to do with him at Thompson? But regardless of who did it, Ethan Sullivan was definitely finished. That much was certain. Now, all that was left was to wait for the final spark to ignite the flames. That evening, Travis Wilson went to the designated spot to dig and unearthed what Michael Thompson had buried. When he opened the bag, he jumped. Inside the inconspicuous black plastic bag were stacks and stacks of cash. A quick glance suggested at least hundreds of thousands of dollars. Besides the money, there was also a single sheet of A4 paper and a USB drive. Travis Wilson looked at the A4 paper. The contents were typed, leaving no handwriting. "The USB drive I gave you contains a backup of yesterday's recording. Below is a list of contacts for media personnel and heads of online comment farms. After you leave Jiang Province, contact the people on this list. Spread the contents of a USB drive. Spend whatever money you need to spend to blow this thing wide open. Only come back when the police summon you for the investigation. Aside from paying off the media, consider the rest of this money in advance on your salary. Once Ethan Sullivan is locked up, you can go visit him occasionally. Keep him company so his prison life isn't too lonely. That's all. We won't be seeing each other again." Travis Wilson's heart pounded with excitement. He unconsciously crumpled the A4 paper in his hand into a ball. The demands on the paper. For him, they were exactly what he wanted. It was just a shame that, even at the end, he had no idea who this benefactor was. But the person had to be someone incredibly powerful and well-connected. Someone like that could decide fates with a whim, who lived and who died. It was probably best not to get too curious. At that very moment, the incredibly powerful figure Travis Wilson was imagining was currently dodging his mother's feather duster. "You rotten kid, if I hadn't come home early today, I never would have known you've been out gallivanting every day." "Mom, I was bored sitting around alone. What's wrong with going out for a walk?" "Going out for a walk? A walk that gets you home at 11 p.m.? You're just asking for it." Margaret Thompson raised the feather duster, ready to discipline Michael Thompson, who yelped and ran. It was another chaotic day for the Thompson family. Over the next few days, Michael Thompson kept a close eye on the Sullivan family's reaction and Travis Wilson's movements. His biggest worry was that the Sullivans would find and control Travis Wilson before he left Jiang Province. Whether through threats or bribes, Michael wasn't sure if Travis could withstand the pressure from the Sullivan family. After all, Travis Wilson was just a thug. Michael wouldn't place his trust in someone like that. Luckily, however, the Sullivan family made no move at all. This was somewhat surprising to Michael. After carefully probing Olivia Sullivan for information, he discovered that Ethan had actually shut himself in his room, becoming withdrawn. He hadn't seen anyone for 2 days. His meals were just left outside his door. When Michael heard this news, he almost burst out laughing. That coward, Ethan Sullivan. He was scared but didn't dare tell his family. Did he really think that after Michael had gone to all this trouble to set this trap, he could just bury his head in the sand like an ostrich and be let off the hook? His best course of action would have been to tell his family the truth immediately and rely on their resources to handle the situation. Whether that meant dealing with Travis Wilson or faking a psychiatric report, a family that large would have more options than he did alone. Failing that, hiring a good lawyer early on might have shaved a couple of years off his sentence. Michael even felt that his move, having Travis Wilson hide out of province and using the media to let the situation escalate, was almost overkill. That idiot Ethan Sullivan wasn't even worthy of being his opponent. And because of Ethan's stupidity, when everything finally blew up, the Sullivan family was caught completely off guard. The flashpoint was an article in the Jiangzhou Evening News titled, "Horrifying, a Brother's Family Honor." The newspaper was filled with the dialogue between the reporter and Travis Wilson, realistically detailing the horrific crimes committed by Ethan Sullivan one by one. Towards the end, the reporter asked Travis Wilson, "Why did you choose to bring this to us, the media, instead of taking the evidence to the local police? Was it to serve as a warning to society, or—" Travis Wilson, "No, I was afraid it would get swept under the rug." Reporter, "How could it be swept under the rug? You should trust the police." Travis Wilson, "His family is very powerful back home." Reporter, "No one is above the law. What will you do next? Will you go back home and file a police report?" Travis Wilson, "I don't dare go back." The report ended abruptly there, but it cleverly shifted the topic to another dimension, rich versus poor. That line, "I don't dare go back," struck a chord with ordinary people, leaving a lingering, unspoken resonance. At the same time, on forums and message boards, accounts of Travis Wilson and Ethan Sullivan's night at Northwood Reservoir began to circulate, along with video and audio recordings. When people heard Ethan Sullivan hitting someone with his car and then threatening Travis Wilson to sink the victim in the reservoir, they were filled with rage. When Ethan Sullivan sneered while admitting his crime and threatened to stab Travis Wilson in the chest, everyone who saw the video or heard the recording felt their hearts clench. Then, everything quickly took a turn. It turned out this was all a setup orchestrated by a brother seeking revenge for his innocently deceased sister. Netizens erupted instantly, and all related posts quickly became trending topics. "Holy crap, this is intense. Even movies wouldn't dare script something like this. That plot twist is insane. Did this really happen? Are you sure this isn't a trailer for some movie?" "The bad guy is Ethan Sullivan. I'm from Lee City. The Sullivans are really well known there. No wonder this Travis Wilson guy doesn't dare go back. He must be afraid of retaliation." The incident quickly blew up online, causing a huge uproar. Angry and righteous netizens swiftly dug up the identities of both Ethan Sullivan and Travis Wilson. This also attracted the attention of mainstream media outlets, with numerous newspapers rushing to report on the matter. The packet of money Michael Thompson left for Travis Wilson barely even played a role in the matter. Travis simply used the media contacts Michael had provided him. After hearing about the situation, many were willing to expose the story without payment. The incident itself was sensational. Ethan Sullivan, the son of an incredibly wealthy family, committing such a heinous crime easily stirred public outrage. Fueled by unseen hands, the story spread across the country with incredible speed. By the time the Sullivan family belatedly learned of it, it was already too late. Silence reigned in the Sullivan residence's living room, though it was filled with people. The atmosphere was suffocatingly tense. Everyone wore different expressions, yet all seemed exceptionally strange. Arthur Sullivan sat in the main seat, his left hand constantly rubbing his temples and the bridge of his nose. His brow furrowed tighter and tighter. His breathing grew heavier, and his little finger trembled uncontrollably. He was forcefully suppressing his emotions, until there was a commotion from the second floor. "Get down here. You still have a nerve to hide in your room." Dad, I know I was wrong." Harold Sullivan, from a branch of the Sullivan family, had lost his usual composure. His face was contorted and flushed red as he dragged Ethan Sullivan forcefully down to the first floor. Ethan, stripped of his usual arrogance, was a blubbering mess, snot and tears streaming down his face as his father hauled him wretchedly down the stairs. Once on the first floor, in front of everyone, Harold viciously slapped Ethan across the face. Crack! The slap, delivered with full force, echoed throughout the entire room. Ethan crumpled to the ground, half his face already swelling grotesquely, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. But Harold felt no relief. Loosening his tie, he stepped forward and brutally kicked Ethan in the stomach, cursing as he did, "Look at the fucking mess you've made. You even dared to kill someone? Are you fucking human? I'll beat you to death today. At least the family will be rid of one disaster." He was truly hitting hard this time, drawing agonized wails and desperate pleas for mercy from his own son. Even Claire Sullivan, Ethan's mother who had always spoiled him, didn't dare intervene, only watching with tears streaming down her face as her husband beat their son in front of the entire family. As for the other branches of the Sullivan family, the eldest branch watched coldly, while the third branch seemed almost mocking. Finally, it was the old patriarch, Arthur Sullivan, who shouted, "Enough! Who are you putting on this show for? I didn't see you discipline him properly before. Is beating him now going to do any good? Stop it. Don't injure him further. It might interfere with the police investigation." He looked toward a trusted confidant nearby and let out a long sigh. "Wait, make a call to Officer Travis's side. Ask them why they haven't arrived yet." "Dad, you can't." You can't let the police take Ethan. Claire Sullivan finally broke down, sobbing. He's my only son. I only have. Ooh. Harold also hurried over, anxious. Dad, isn't there any leeway in this matter? Ethan just made a terrible mistake, Dad. He looked at Ethan, collapsed on the floor, clutching his stomach, choked with anger, and kicked him again. Why are you just lying there like an idiot? Don't you want to live? Ethan immediately reacted, dropping to his knees with a thud. He started banging his head repeatedly on the floor, kowtowing until his forehead bled, snot and tears mixing on his face. Grandpa, I really know I was wrong. Save me, you have to save me. Arthur Sullivan looked at the tear-stricken family of three, then at the others, the cold indifference of the first branch, the mocking, theater-watching gaze of the third branch. For a moment, he felt a sense of utter, heart-numbing despair. Leeway? Save you? Ha. Arthur Sullivan pushed himself unsteadily to his feet, grabbed his cane, and brought it down hard on Ethan's head. Ethan cried out in pain, clutching his bleeding head. Arthur Sullivan, highly agitated, slammed his cane repeatedly on the floor. How am I supposed to save you? Do you understand you killed someone? Murder demands a life. That's the law, and nobody, not even God himself, can change it. A momentary lapse? Do you think the law is a joke? Go ask the police. Ask the judge if they can save you, if they'll forgive you. People nearby quickly rushed to support him. Dad, calm down. Get away. Arthur shoved away those trying to help him, pointing at Ethan. From now on, the law decides his sentence. Whether it's prison or execution, he deserves it. If any of you dare pull any strings behind the scenes, then get out of the Sullivan family. I've lost a grandson today. I don't mind losing a son as well. He stormed out of the living room, fuming, completely ignoring the pleading voices behind him, leaving without a single glance back. Michael Thompson had underestimated this old man. Faced with a choice between family ties and law and justice, Arthur Sullivan had chosen the latter without hesitation. Wee woo. That night, police cars pulled into the Sullivan family estate. Arthur Sullivan sat in his study, watching through the window as his own grandson was put in handcuffs and escorted by police officers into a squad car. He didn't make an appearance. He didn't want to. The old man, nearing the end of his life, simply sat there, staring blankly through the window at the scene unfolding. Ethan Sullivan was his grandson. No matter how angry he was at his failings, he was still his own flesh and blood. It was impossible to feel absolutely nothing. He sat numbly in his chair, recalling his life. Was his life truly a success? What was the point of building such a vast fortune? To pass it on to people like this? What would they do? Murder? Arson? They only knew how to harm others. Arthur Sullivan was a successful entrepreneur, a formidable tycoon in the eyes of others, a patriotic businessman who drove the economic development of his hometown, a philanthropist dedicated to public welfare. But he truly wasn't a good father. Because his wife had died early and he was consumed by his career, he had neglected his children's upbringing. Arthur had genuinely known poverty, feared it deeply. Of his two younger sisters, one had been sold by their parents, and the other, after their parents died, he himself had carried off to be sold. Because he couldn't afford to raise her. Because he craved a simple white steamed bun, not the scratchy wild greens that were hard to swallow. It was precisely this experience that drove Arthur to make money, desperate that his children never experience his kind of despair. But as the business grew larger and larger, his time grew shorter, and the distance between him and his family widened. Eventually, he noticed that the look in his children's eyes when they regarded him wasn't awe or respect for a father, not care or concern, but the glint of money. Greed. Arthur Sullivan clutched his chest tightly and slowly collapsed to the floor, a gasping, wheezing sound coming from his throat. Someone was knocking at the study door. The knocking went on for a long time, until finally, someone broke the door down. Grandpa, call an ambulance. Quick, P.S. Hey everyone, popping up, seeing all your enthusiastic inquiries about this author's home address. Nervous laugh. I feel I should weekly explain the update situation. Aside from the 10,000 character burst the other day, I've basically been keeping to 2 chapters a day recently, or sometimes combining 2 into 1 for easier uploading. The reason is really just time and my slow hands. This author has a day job, so I basically only get to write at night, which means updates are late, and I usually don't get to sleep until the early hours. As for the slow hands, that's an old issue. To maintain quality, it's just continued this way. I'll try my best to adjust going forward. Thank you all for your continued support. Thomas-style 360-degree aerial spin while kneeling, desperately begging for 5-star reviews. Please, Lastly, if you have any gifts, feel free to toss them this author's way. It seems Tomato has free gifts that don't cost you anything. Thanks. Carrot Omega Carrot. A video had been making the rounds online lately. The Thompson family had just finished their turkey dinner and were gathered in the living room, watching TV. The local Green Valley news station was on. A female anchor was reporting on the rich kid murder case that had been blowing up online. Michael Thompson had been keeping an eye on the public reaction over the past few days. Seeing it on the local news now, he figured Ethan Sullivan must have been arrested. Margaret Thompson clicked her tongue. Can you believe something like this happened right here in Green Valley? Goodness, whose child is he? The news report only mentioned the suspect as Ethan S., without naming the Sullivan family. Otherwise, Margaret Thompson would surely have recognized the name, given they were the wealthiest family in town. Margaret Thompson, ever the worrier, warned Michael, "You should stay home more for a while. See? It's not safe out there." Michael laughed. "Mom, they already caught him. What's not safe? It's like saying if you choke on your food once, you should stop eating altogether. Well, you should still go out less. Your father and I haven't been home much lately, and I think you've been running wild, going out all the time." Margaret was clearly using this as an excuse to lecture him. Michael couldn't stand the nagging and quickly got up, heading for the kitchen. "Mom, just relax. I'll do the dishes." "Hey, I say 2 words and you run off? Am I not allowed to speak my mind as your mother?" "Of course you can, of course. I just didn't want to tire you out. I'll do the dishes tonight. Gotta uphold the family honor, right?" Michael replied with a grin, heading toward the kitchen. Once he was in the kitchen, he glanced back at the living room. Seeing his mom was still engrossed in the TV, he pulled his phone out from his coat pocket and called Olivia Sullivan. He made the call for 2 reasons. First, he'd been so busy dealing with the Ethan Sullivan situation that he hadn't talked to Olivia much and really missed her. Second, he needed to find out through Olivia how the Sullivan family was reacting. With something this major happening to the Sullivans, things over there must be chaotic. He wanted to gauge Old Man Sullivan's attitude about the whole thing. In his previous life, Michael had learned about most of the Sullivans while plotting against them, but Old Man Sullivan had passed away when Michael was still in high school. He'd never met him, only hearing stories about the grandfather from his wife. Olivia, naturally, had nothing but fond memories of the grandfather who had doted on her since childhood. He was the relative she felt closest to in the Sullivan family. In this lifetime, Michael had also grown fond of the old man during their interactions, but they hadn't spent much time together, so he didn't have a deep understanding of Old Man Sullivan's personality and temperament. Michael wasn't sure how Old Man Sullivan would handle the Ethan situation. The old man's reaction would influence how Michael interacted with him in the future, which was why he wanted to get a sense of his attitude from Olivia. The phone rang, but seconds ticked by, and no one picked up. "The number you have dialed is temporarily unavailable." Finally, the call went to the automated voicemail message. Olivia hadn't answered. Michael looked at his phone, puzzled, muttering, "Weird. Does she not have her phone on her?" He had no idea what had happened to the Sullivan house that evening. He just found it strange because Olivia almost always answered or texted back immediately. He didn't dwell on it and sent Olivia a message on Messenger, mentioning the news report he saw and asking how things were on her end. After sending the message, Michael put his phone away, rolled up his sleeves, and started washing the dishes. It wasn't until a few days later that Michael learned Old Man Sullivan had been hospitalized, having fallen ill from the stress of the Ethan situation. He also found out about Old Man Sullivan's stance on the matter and was somewhat surprised. He hadn't expected the old man to be so uncompromising when it came to major issues of right and wrong. During that time, another incident occurred. Ethan Sullivan's mother, Claire Sullivan, took advantage of the old man's hospitalization. In an attempt to lessen her son's charges, she went to the victim's family's home and tried to buy their agreement to a settlement, hoping for a lighter sentence for Ethan. But the victim's family refused. Claire ended up causing a scene at their place of business, even resorting to threats. Eventually, the incident was reported directly by the media and even made the newspapers. Public attention was already high on the case, and Claire Sullivan basically walked right into the crossfire. It even affected the Sullivan family's businesses. The stock prices of several of their companies plummeted. Word was that Old Man Sullivan, who had just gotten out of the intensive care unit, was so enraged he nearly had to be rushed back for emergency treatment. As soon as Michael Thompson heard about this, he knew that Travis Wilson must have gotten a taste of the power of the media. Although Wilson was still hiding out of state, it was obvious he was advising his family members from afar. Michael learned about all these developments from Olivia during their phone calls. "Maybe I should stop by the hospital tomorrow and visit your grandfather?" Michael Thompson asked, holding his phone. Olivia hesitated. Maybe it's better to wait a bit. It's probably not a good time right now." She phrased it tactfully, but she clearly didn't want Michael coming over then. She didn't want him to see her family at their worst. Michael thought about it and understood. He didn't insist, just smiled and said, "School starts in a couple of days. Want to come over for another turkey dinner or something before then? My mom keeps asking about you." "Aunt, she's really that concerned about me?" "Yeah," Michael teased. "She's worried you're not getting enough to eat." "Did you tell Aunt something ridiculous again?" Olivia asked reproachfully, then sighed. "Well, apologize to Aunt for me, but I really can't make it over these days." Michael sounded disappointed. "All right then. Olivia murmured. Just as she was about to hang up, she suddenly remembered Michael's tendency for impulsive actions and quickly added, "And don't just show up suddenly this time, trying to surprise me or anything. I really won't be able to get away." Michael replied with mock seriousness, "Miss Olivia, do you think romance is the only thing on my mind? I happen to be very busy myself." Although Olivia was the one who had told him not to come, Michael's blunt response left her feeling a little put out. But then she heard Michael continue, "However, I do need to see you tomorrow. And of course, it's not because I desperately miss you after almost a week apart. It's just that school starts in 3 days, and I was hoping to borrow your vacation homework to copy. Strictly business, you understand?" His deadpan justification instantly swept away the slight annoyance Olivia had felt. Olivia felt pleased, but deliberately put on a stern voice. "Do your own homework. I'm not bragging, but seriously, I haven't touched it. Not a single word." "What's there to brag about? That's just embarrassing. Which is why I must appeal to the great mercy of the benevolent Church of St. Sullivan. You're my only hope in this matter." "There's no such church. Watch your mouth, or you'll get your tongue pulled out," Olivia retorted, pretending to be annoyed, then sighed with a tone of, "What am I going to do with you?" "All right, fine, but only for half an hour." She pretended not to know that the homework for the art studio program was different from the honors track. Michael laughed. "You got it. I'll even have a custom banner made, beautiful and kind-hearted, and deliver it to your house with a full marching band." Olivia got flustered. "That's mortifying. Don't you dare actually do something like that." She had a sinking feeling Michael was exactly the type of person who would. As they were talking, Michael suddenly heard some noise in the background on Olivia's end. It sounded like a woman crying and shouting about something. The voice was distant, and Michael Thompson couldn't quite make out what was happening on her end. But Olivia Sullivan's mood suddenly dipped, and her voice lowered on the phone. "Something came up here. I have to go." Michael Thompson replied. "Okay. How about I come see you tomorrow at 2 p.m.? Okay." Olivia Sullivan hung up, clutching her phone, a little reluctant to end the call. Talking with Michael Thompson was nice. It helped her forget her troubles. But Michael Thompson wasn't a miracle worker. There were some things even he couldn't help her with. Right then, Olivia Sullivan was standing in the hallway outside a room at City General Hospital. From the room, behind her came a woman's hysterical cries. "Dad, how can you be so cruel? Ethan Sullivan is your grandson, too." Passing patients and nurses glanced towards the room, wondering what was going on inside. Olivia Sullivan sighed softly. She knew it was her mother arguing with her grandfather again. Lately, Olivia Sullivan's parents had been locked in intense conflict. Harold Sullivan was furious with his wife, Claire Sullivan, for her scheming, which everyone knew about. And on top of that, the fact that their son was a loan shark made it hard for him to hold his head up in the family. Claire Sullivan, in turn, blamed her husband's indifference towards their child, even believing it was his fault the boy hadn't been disciplined properly. It started with arguments, escalated to fights, and now they were on the brink of divorce. Lately, Claire Sullivan had thrown caution to the wind. Since her scheming had been exposed anyway, she'd taken to coming straight to the hospital to cry to the old man, acting like a shrew each time, railing against his cold-heartedness. Olivia Sullivan truly didn't know what to do. Finding out her own brother was a loan shark was shocking enough. Before she could even process that her parents were talking divorce, and her mother was constantly coming to the hospital making outrageous demands of her grandfather. She was caught in the middle, torn in every direction. Being the younger generation, her words carried little weight, leaving her feeling helpless and frustrated, watching from the sidelines. She really didn't want Michael Thompson to come over and witness her family's drama. Eventually, Harold Sullivan arrived at City General Hospital and dragged Claire Sullivan away from the hospital room door. They erupted into a fierce argument until hospital staff intervened and escorted them outside. The couple never once noticed Olivia Sullivan standing nearby, watching them. Olivia Sullivan watched her parents leave, then glumly entered the hospital room. Inside, Arthur Sullivan lay in bed, his face still flushed, clearly still angry. Nearby were Uncle Harold and his wife, Uncle Victor and his wife, and also Harold Sullivan's eldest son, Olivia Sullivan's older cousin, a community college student. They were fussing over him solicitously, urging the old man to calm down while criticizing their sister-in-law for her lack of sense. "Dad, calm down. You know how our sister-in-law is, a woman from the countryside, uneducated, doesn't understand the law. Does she think a death sentence is something you could just talk your way out of? Asking you to find a way. It's completely unrealistic." "That's right, Dad. Our sister-in-law was way out of line this time, but Ethan Sullivan is her son, after all. Her son killed someone. It's natural for a mother to panic. Have an apple. Tomorrow, I'll have someone stand guard at your door to make sure she doesn't barge into your room again like today." Uncle Harold and Uncle Victor had clearly noticed Olivia Sullivan enter, but they continued speaking carelessly right in front of her. Olivia Sullivan's eyes reddened. She silently clenched her fists, standing beside the bed without a word. Finally, Arthur Sullivan waved his hand impatiently. "All of you leave for now. Let me have some peace. Olivia can stay with me." "But," I said, "get out." The old man was losing his temper. The others had no choice but to leave the room. Once only the grandfather and granddaughter remained, old Mr. Sullivan's expression softened. He beckoned kindly to his granddaughter. Olivia Sullivan's eyes were brimming with tears. She sat by the bed, took the old man's hand, and choked out, "Grandpa, I'm sorry." Arthur Sullivan patted her head, his eyes full of affection. "Silly girl, what are you apologizing for? You haven't done anything to wrong me or the Sullivan family. But my mom. Your mother is your mother, and you are you. How can they be the same?" Arthur Sullivan could see how difficult things had been for Olivia Sullivan lately, which was why he'd specifically asked her to stay behind. He had something to tell her. He looked at his granddaughter and asked, "Olivia, you're starting your senior year soon, aren't you?" "Senior year starts this fall, Grandpa. Your goal is Harvard University, right? You'll have to work very hard," Arthur Sullivan said. "I remember your parents bought you an apartment near the school, didn't they?" "Yes." Olivia Sullivan nodded. She did own an apartment near Oakwood High School. Her mother had bought it for her last year for her 18th birthday celebration, calling it her Sweet 16 gift. The place was already renovated, but Olivia Sullivan hadn't moved in yet. Her plan was to live there during her senior year, instead of commuting from their house in Riverside City. That way, she wouldn't waste over 2 hours commuting every day and would have more time to study. Arthur Sullivan offered a solution. "Go home and pack in the next couple of days. When school starts, move into the apartment." Olivia Sullivan looked up at her grandfather, surprised. Arthur Sullivan said earnestly, "Your focus should be on your studies right now. Don't worry about things at home." Olivia Sullivan understood immediately. Her grandfather didn't want the family problems to affect her. She felt touched, but also hesitant. "But you're still young, and my health isn't so bad that I'm completely bettered in yet," Arthur Sullivan said kindly. "Grandpa can still manage this family. You don't need to worry." Olivia Sullivan sighed, softly, and nodded. "I understand, Grandpa." "Good." Arthur Sullivan nodded, satisfied, and smiled. "Let's not talk about unpleasant things. Speaking of which, a friend of mine is having his 70th birthday celebration next month. I probably won't be able to go. Why don't you go in my place, just to represent us?" Olivia Sullivan was quite surprised and instinctively wanted to refuse. These kinds of social obligations were usually handled by her father's generation, her dad and uncles. Before she could voice her refusal, Arthur Sullivan added, "Michael Thompson will probably be there too." That single sentence made Olivia Sullivan swallow the words that were already on the tip of her tongue. Arthur Sullivan saw her subtle reaction and couldn't help chuckling. "Yeah, youth is wonderful, isn't it?" Hearing this, Olivia Sullivan knew her feelings had been seen through, and her face flushed with embarrassment. The next day, Michael Thompson and Olivia Sullivan met at the arranged time in the park in her neighborhood. "Here," Olivia Sullivan said, pulling her winter break homework out of her backpack and handing it to Michael Thompson. "Just make sure I get it back when school starts." Michael Thompson took it and casually slipped it into his own backpack. The homework wasn't the point. He was just worried about Olivia and wanted to see how she was doing. "She looks a bit worn out," he thought, his heart aching a little as he looked at Olivia's somewhat drained expression. This whole thing with Ethan Sullivan must have really taken a toll on her these past few days. Maybe I should have waited until after college to deal with Ethan Sullivan. That way, she'd be out of town, and all the Sullivan family drama wouldn't affect her. Was I too hasty? But Olivia's expression suddenly changed. She'd heard Michael's thoughts. The situation with Ethan Sullivan. Was Michael behind it? Michael had promised he'd deal with Ethan Sullivan, but when things finally came crashing down on Ethan, she hadn't connected Michael to it. Because Michael had orchestrated it so flawlessly. He positioned Travis Wilson as the obvious culprit, leaving no trace of his own involvement. Even if things went south with Travis Wilson, the most anyone could figure out was that someone else was involved, but they'd never be able to track it back to Michael. Olivia looked at Michael. He hadn't sensed anything was wrong and was smiling warmly at her, his gaze gentle. But his thoughts took a determined turn. Still, dealing with it early was the right call. If Ethan Sullivan had actually gone abroad, wouldn't he have just escaped justice? Even keeping him in the country. In the past life, he was the reason she couldn't go to Harvard University and ended up going north instead. He's nothing but trouble if left unchecked. You can't do wrong without facing the consequences. Hearing these thoughts, the slight change in Olivia's expression gradually softened. Regardless, Michael stood on the side of justice. He was right. Ethan Sullivan had broken the law and deserved to be punished. It wasn't just that Olivia and Ethan had never gotten along. Even if they had been close, she would have agreed with Michael's actions after learning about her brother's appalling behavior. When she looked at Michael again, a sweet smile spread across her face. Michael hated getting involved in troublesome things, so the fact that he'd gone to such lengths meant he was doing it all to protect her. He thought she had no idea that he was just quietly working behind the scenes. Coming to see her today, asking to copy homework, that was just an excuse. He'd really come because he was worried and wanted to check on her. Olivia decided to pretend she hadn't heard any of it, keeping it locked away inside. Just then, Michael noticed Olivia had come out pulling a suitcase. "Are you going on a trip?" he asked. "No," Olivia said, shaking her head. "I'm moving." "Moving?" "Yeah. Grandpa suggested I move out for a while." Olivia mumbled, not explaining why. Michael didn't push, as he could pretty much guess the reason. Regarding Ethan Sullivan, although it would be a long time before the verdict, as far as Michael was concerned, the issue was closed the moment Ethan was arrested. He figured Ethan likely wouldn't see the outside again for the rest of his life. The Sullivan family might be in turmoil for a while because of this, but Arthur Sullivan having Olivia move out sent a clear message. He didn't want his granddaughter burdened by the fallout. Any further chaos within the Sullivan family was no longer Michael's concern. Besides, he believed that with the old man still around, the turmoil wouldn't last long. Olivia stood up, winked at Michael. "Want to come see my new place?" "Sure," Michael agreed readily. Olivia's new home was an apartment near Oakwood High School. It wasn't huge, but at 1,200 sq.ft., the apartment was more than enough space for her. The apartment was already decorated and fully furnished. Olivia had only needed to bring a few changes of clothes. Michael looked around and thought it was quite nice. The whole place had a cozy feel. "Are you living here alone?" he asked. Olivia was making tea, waiting by the kettle for the water to boil. "No," she said when she heard his question. "Claire Evans said she'd come stay with me." Claire Evans lived pretty far away, so she always boarded at the school dorms. Now that Olivia had this place all to herself, Claire Evans was joining her. "Well, make sure Claire Evans pays you rent," Michael joked. "You don't charge good friends money," Olivia mumbled. "Then make her your personal maid. Laundry, cooking, cleaning," Michael urged mischievously. Olivia shot him a playful glare. "Claire Evans would kill you if she heard that. Besides, Grandpa already hired a housekeeper for me, Aunt Maggie, but she doesn't start until tomorrow." "What about tonight, then? Are you planning to go back to Riverside City?" "I was planning to just grab a bite at a nearby diner." Olivia glanced shyly at Michael, asking quietly, "Want to come with me?" She hoped Michael would stay and have dinner with her. "Eat out." Michael dragged out the words as if seriously considering it, then shook his head. "Can't do that." "Do you have important plans tonight?" Olivia asked, a little disappointed. "We could go somewhere really close, like that little place downstairs. It'll be quick, I promise. It won't take much of your time." But Michael just said, "Nope, I'm free tonight." "Then why?" "My mom says those places aren't clean, always using cheap oil." Olivia immediately pouted, looking displeased. Since when was Michael such a mama's boy? He clearly just didn't want to have dinner with her. Seriously, what kind of excuse was that? But Michael leaned in with a grin and gently pinched her cheek, making her pout even more pronounced. "That pout's big enough to hang something on." Olivia, flushing with embarrassment and annoyance, slapped his hand away. Michael stopped teasing her. He rolled up his sleeves energetically and declared, "Of course, we can't eat out, because tonight, you're getting homemade meatloaf. I'm cooking." It finally clicked that Michael had been teasing her the whole time. She felt a flash of annoyance. But the thought of Michael cooking for her himself also sparked a little flicker of anticipation. "Come on, let's go to the supermarket. You probably need to pick up some daily essentials anyway, right? We could get everything at once." Michael headed for the door. Olivia followed him, then suddenly remembered something. "Hey, make sure to buy extra food," she called after him. Claire Evans said she's coming over soon. Michael's smile froze. So much for a private evening. Doesn't she get the idea of a romantic dinner? Claire Evans talk about a third wheel. A giant, high-wattage one. On their way back from the supermarket, Michael Thompson carried a large bag in each hand, while Olivia Sullivan followed behind him with a small bag of her own. They had bought quite a few things at the store. Olivia Sullivan seemed to be in a great mood the whole way. She loved this feeling. Shopping with someone she liked, walking home together. It felt so cozy. She rummaged through her bag and pulled out a dog bowl. Michael Thompson, did you grab the wrong thing? I don't have a dog. Michael Thompson glanced over and chuckled. I thought you might bring Buddy over to live with you. Buddy, the dog you mentioned, was Grandpa Sullivan's big, fierce German Shepherd. Olivia Sullivan really liked that dog. That's Grandpa's favorite dog. And besides, my place doesn't allow large breeds. Olivia Sullivan felt a pang of regret about Buddy, too. Michael Thompson comforted her. Who knows? Maybe your grandpa will bring Buddy over for a visit someday. Then the bowl will come in handy. We already bought it. Returning it is a hassle. Might as well keep it just in case. Olivia Sullivan figured he had a point and put the dog bowl back in the bag. Once they got home, Michael Thompson put on an apron, grabbed the 2 big bags of groceries, and headed into the kitchen. Olivia Sullivan wanted to help, but after she peeled a fist-sized potato down to the size of her thumb, Michael Thompson shooed her out. Hey, superstar, why don't you go relax and watch TV? I'll bring dinner out when it's done. How about that? I can help. Olivia Sullivan pouted, still unconvinced. I couldn't bear to let you tire yourself out, Michael Thompson said, though inwardly he scoffed. Give me a break. In her past life, she spent decades learning to cook and still managed to land me in the hospital getting my stomach pumped. Little Olivia's cooking should be treated like nuclear weapons. We promise not to use Olivia's cuisine unless the other side uses weapons of mass destruction first. Ha ha ha. Olivia Sullivan glared, furious, but couldn't lash out. It was only at times like this that she hated her ability to hear Michael Thompson's thoughts. Michael Thompson's snark was really something else. He was a master at getting under her skin. But since he was only thinking these things, Olivia Sullivan couldn't get angry about it. It wasn't that she hadn't considered telling Michael Thompson the truth. Once, while chatting with him on Messenger, she had tried to subtly probe him. What would you do if someone could know everything you were thinking? I'd definitely stay far away from that person. Preferably never see them again in my life. That was Michael Thompson's exact response. Olivia Sullivan asked him again why. After a long pause, as if he'd given it serious thought, Michael Thompson replied, Don't you think that's terrifying? Everyone has secrets, right? There are things you wouldn't want even the closest people to know. So, ever since then, Olivia Sullivan had resolved to hide it carefully from Michael Thompson, to absolutely never let him know she could hear his thoughts. What if he found out? Would Michael Thompson leave her? Olivia Sullivan didn't even dare to think about it. That was the one thing she absolutely couldn't let happen. So, even if Michael Thompson was tearing her down his mind, she couldn't get angry. Can't get angry, absolutely not. If Michael Thompson's cooking turned out bad, she would definitely find fault with it. But when Michael Thompson started bringing dishes to the table, one delicacy after another, Olivia Sullivan completely forgot the vow she had just made. The large table was filled entirely with her favorite dishes, fragrant and beautifully presented. She tried to bite with her chopsticks, her expression immediately turning surprised. If anyone else had tasted it, they would surely have found the dishes too sweet, significantly detracting from the flavor. But this was exactly how Olivia Sullivan liked it. She preferred sweeter dishes. Not even her family knew this, because Olivia Sullivan never voiced opinions about the food at the Sullivan family dinner table. But Michael Thompson knew. Not only did he know what she liked to eat, but he also knew her taste preferences. A wave of emotion washed over her. Michael Thompson deliberately said, Oops, I accidentally mistook the sugar for salt and added extra sugar. Is it too sweet? Olivia Sullivan shook her head, smiling. Not at all, it's delicious. I didn't know you were such a good cook. I only know how to make these few dishes. Practice makes perfect, Michael Thompson replied with a smile. He wasn't lying. Besides a few simple things like scrambled eggs with tomatoes, these were the only dishes he knew how to make. Because Olivia Sullivan loved them, he had specifically learned them from a skilled chef. But in his past life, how long had it been since he personally cooked a meal for Olivia Sullivan? Almost 10 years. Michael Thompson felt a mix of emotions watching Olivia Sullivan happily sample every dish. It left a slightly bittersweet taste. If you like it, I'll cook for you every day from now on. Okay, then I'll tell Grandpa to fire our housekeeper, Aunt Maggie, and you can come apply for the job tomorrow. Olivia Sullivan's eyes curved into beautiful crescents as she joked. Michael Thompson chuckled. I'm very expensive. Olivia Sullivan puffed out her chest proudly. That's okay, I have money. Oh, perfect. I've finally achieved my life goal of being supported entirely by a woman, Michael Thompson teased. My mom will be thrilled. She'd probably reward me with her favorite, a big slap across the face. As they were laughing and talking, the doorbell rang, ding dong, ding dong. Olivia Sullivan started to get up. That might be Claire Evans. I'll get it, Michael Thompson volunteered, heading to the door. He walked over and opened the door to find a smiling Claire Evans dragging a suitcase. Surprise, Michael Thompson, what are you doing here? Michael Thompson pretended not to know her. Sorry, we don't subscribe to the newspaper. What newspaper? Isn't this Olivia's place? You got the wrong house. Try next door. How could I be wrong when you're here? Michael Thompson tried to close the door, but Claire Evans forcefully pushed it open, trying to get inside. The commotion got so loud that Olivia Sullivan came over, grabbed Michael Thompson by the ear, and finally let Claire Evans in. Claire Evans dragged her suitcase in, fuming. Michael Thompson, you're unbelievable. So quick to burn bridges after you get what you want. If I'd known, I wouldn't have helped you. Michael Thompson gave her a deadpan look and said dismissively, Yeah, you're right. Since you put it that way, how about you help me out again? Come back in 2 hours. Wouldn't that be too late for everything? Claire Evans blushed. Although she was keen on setting them up because Olivia liked Michael Thompson as a good friend, that didn't mean she could just stand by and let something happen between Michael Thompson and Olivia Sullivan. They were still high school students. Dating, holding hands, maybe some kissing and hugging was okay. But anything more than that was out of the question. What if she got pregnant? That would be a disaster. Although Claire Evans seemed outgoing, deep down she was quite conservative. Olivia was so naive, and this Michael Thompson guy was such a bad influence. What if he sweet-talked Olivia into doing something she'd regret? No way. I have to help Olivia draw the line here, at least while they're still in high school. Good thing I'm moving in with her. Olivia Sullivan smoothed things over. Okay, let's eat first. Only then did Claire Evans notice the large spread of food on the table, which looked quite appealing. Did you guys order takeout? She asked, surprised. Is there a diner this good near School Plaza? Olivia Sullivan said, a little proudly. Michael Thompson cooked it himself. Seriously? Claire Evans was taken aback. Inwardly, she had to admit this Michael Thompson guy really was talented. No wonder Olivia Sullivan liked him so much. As she sat down and saw the bowl and chopsticks Michael Thompson had set out for her, a vein throbbed in her forehead. Michael Thompson. Claire Evans gritted her teeth, holding up a single chopstick. Why do I only have one chopstick? Michael Thompson quickly apologized. Oh, shoot, sorry, my bad. I'll get you another one. But you know, he added, chopsticks always come in pairs. One chopstick doesn't work in 3. That doesn't seem quite right either, does it? There's always one left over. Puffed. Olivia Sullivan, who was sipping tea, nearly choked. She covered her mouth, trying to suppress her laughter, then shot Michael Thompson an exasperated glare. Such a jerk. 2 days later, the new school semester began. Life settled into a calm routine. Olivia Sullivan had moved into an off-campus apartment zone for the school district, temporarily free from the troubles of the Thompson family. Michael Thompson also kept a low profile. He attended classes during the day, returned home in the evenings to learn stone carving from his uncle, and spent his nights catching up on high school academics and carving techniques through the system's training courses. His days were ordinary, yet fulfilling. However, during the second semester of his sophomore year, many students from Michael Thompson's art track left town. While Oakwood High School offered art courses, it wasn't their strong suit. Some students aiming for Ivy League universities chose to attend specialized art workshops elsewhere for about a semester. Michael Thompson didn't go, and neither did his deskmate, Travis Miller. Michael didn't need to go, while Travis was purely coasting and couldn't be bothered to put in the effort to study art elsewhere. Before they knew it, a month had passed in the second half of sophomore year, and Oakwood High School held its first monthly exam. The day after the exams finished, the results were posted on the bulletin board. Travis Miller dragged Michael Thompson over to see the scores. When he saw Michael's rank, his jaw nearly hit the floor, his mouth wide open. Holy crap, 6 in an entire grade? Dude, did you cheat? The previous exam had been the final exam, where Michael Thompson ranked somewhere in the 200s for the grade and 10th in the art track, earning him a harsh lecture from his mom back home. But after studying with the system's training courses, Michael had basically relearned all his high school material. His academic scores were even better than in his previous life. Back then, Michael Thompson had always hovered around the top 10 in honors class, typically ranking around 50th in the grade overall. Oakwood High School was already a top-tier provincial high school, ranking 6th in the grade, virtually guaranteed a spot in one of the top 10 universities in the country. Travis Miller slung an arm around his shoulder, teasing, "Dude, not cool. Cheating without me." Michael Thompson chuckled, slapping his hand off his shoulder. "Yeah, I just bombed the last one. This is my actual level of skill, got it?" "You're right, dude." Voice cracking. After joking around for a bit, Michael Thompson looked at the other results. Little Olivia Sullivan had performed consistently, reclaiming her spot as first in the grade. It seemed the Thompson family troubles were no longer affecting her. Surprisingly, Jake Wilson managed to hold onto a spot in the top 50. Michael found this unexpected, as Jake usually hovered around the 100th rank, except for the last final exam. Claire Evans' scores were originally better than Jake Wilson's, but this time they scored similarly, with close rankings. Just as Michael Thompson was looking at the bulletin board, his homeroom teacher, Ms. Evans, appeared seemingly out of nowhere. "Michael Thompson, well done. Just as expected from a top student originally from honors class, Ms. Evans congratulated him with a smile, then her expression hardened as she looked at Travis Miller. "Travis Miller, come to my office later. How did you manage to rank second to last in the entire class? The only person below you missed an exam due to illness." Travis Miller's face fell instantly, and he meekly followed Ms. Evans toward the office. Just as Ms. Evans was about to lead Travis away, she remembered something. "Oh, right, Michael Thompson. Have you thought about applying through the special admissions programs? If you're considering it, you need to start preparing in your sophomore year." Michael Thompson replied, "Doesn't our school lack recommendation slots for art majors?" "We don't, but you're exceptionally talented. I think you should try applying on your own merit," Ms. Evans encouraged. Michael Thompson didn't commit immediately, just saying, "I'll think about it." He didn't have much time for competitions, and his target university was the top art school, Rhode Island School of Design. Applying through self-recommendation felt like a long shot. But he'd see, there was still time. Meanwhile, on the west side of Pine Creek Town stood a grand residence with high walls, guarded by 2 stone lions at the entrance. Above the main gate hung a plaque. This household held considerable prestige in Pine Creek Town, as it was the home of Samuel Shaw. These past few days, many people had been coming and going from the Shaw family home for one reason. In 3 days, it would be old Master Shaw's 70th birthday celebration. This master craftsman, a national treasure, looked remarkably ordinary. A short little old man with a goatee, his hair long since white, his wrinkled face dotted with age spots. Samuel Shaw sat in the courtyard, reclining in a rocking chair, hands tucked into his sleeves, curled up and dozing in the sun. Inside the Shaw residence's living room, Samuel Shaw's son, Xavier Shaw, was jotting something down in a notebook. He was tallying the monetary gifts and presents sent by the guests who would attend the birthday celebration in 3 days and drafting invitations for those attending the day after tomorrow. Samuel Shaw had cultivated a vast network over the years, and among the visitors were many wealthy families who sent exceptionally generous gifts. Some red envelopes contained tens of thousands of dollars. Xavier Shaw was naturally grinning from ear to ear. He had recently suffered a setback dealing with the Thompson family and was worrying about repaying a loan shark. This was perfect timing. As for whether the old man would be angry later upon discovering he'd pocketed the money, Xavier couldn't care less. Why didn't the old man give him money in the first place? Just then, he saw the gift list sent by the Thompson family and instantly bristled with anger. Those shameless people, especially that little bastard, beating me up and still expecting to learn craftsmanship from the Shaw family? The mere thought of that Thompson kid made his teeth itch with hatred. However, he was also a little afraid of Michael Thompson. The kid was wild and possessed a fierce ruthlessness. He genuinely seemed capable of crippling him. If the Thompson family hadn't shown some consideration for the old master-apprentice relationship, Xavier might have actually ended up in jail. Xavier Shaw didn't dare go near the Thompson family anymore, but he certainly wouldn't let any Thompson into the Shaw family home either. He surreptitiously glanced towards the open courtyard gate, saw the old man still dozing in the rocking chair, and without hesitation, ripped the Thompson family's gift list to shreds and threw it into the trash can. He decided to pretend he never received it. As for the monetary gift and presents they sent, no refunds. Because of Xavier Shaw's actions, after sending their gift list, the Thompson family waited for 3 days. As Samuel Shaw's birthday arrived, they still hadn't received any response from the Shaw family. George Thompson sounded resigned. Looks like it's a no-go. Robert Thompson was more philosophical. It's all right. Let Michael Thompson just learn from Uncle Ben Thompson for now. Even if he went to the Shaw family, if they weren't willing to teach him sincerely, he'd be better off with Uncle Ben anyway. George Thompson frowned. Should we maybe pay a visit to the Shaw family in person? Second brother, there's really no need. Honestly, I wasn't too keen on Michael Thompson going to the Shaw family in the first place, Robert Thompson sighed. You always say we should let go of the past for the sake of the children's future. But how can it be that easy to let go? If it weren't for that old dog back then, would fifth brother have given up carving? Didn't fifth brother suffer enough because of him? Robert Thompson was usually reserved, the type to keep things bottled up. But now, he couldn't hold back any longer and finally voiced the resentment he'd harbored for years. Of the 5 Thompson brothers, excluding the eldest who went abroad early on, the remaining 4 had all originally apprenticed under Samuel Shaw. Uncle Ben Thompson, the youngest, had joined the Shaw household at 14. By then, George Thompson had already been learning from Samuel Shaw for 8 years. George should have struck out on his own long before, but he couldn't afford to open his own shop, and with his younger brothers still under Samuel Shaw, he stayed on, helping Samuel with his work. But less than a year after Uncle Ben arrived, Samuel Shaw's son, Xavier Shaw, tricked him into co-signing a loan. Xavier then skipped town, leaving a bewildered Uncle Ben indebted to a loan shark for a huge sum. Uncle Ben was young then and afraid to tell his brothers. He was nearly killed by the loan shark trying to collect. When it all finally came out, George and his brothers were still essentially working for free at the Shaws, barely scraping by. They managed to scrounge up only half the money and had no choice but to tell Samuel Shaw. Samuel Shaw paid off the debt, but what truly disheartened the brothers was that when Xavier returned, he insisted Uncle Ben had borrowed the money from the loan shark himself. And Samuel Shaw actually believed his son over his apprentice. Although Samuel didn't say much, his attitude towards Uncle Ben grew noticeably colder. Feeling deeply wronged, Uncle Ben eventually couldn't take it anymore and left the Shaw household. He later used connections to learn tailoring and eventually married the old tailor's daughter, who would become Michael Thompson's Aunt Rose. The Thompson brothers were also deeply disappointed. After leaving the Shaws and establishing themselves, they earned enough money to repay Samuel for the loan shark debt, but from then on, the two families cut off ties completely. Now, dredging up the past, Robert Thompson was still indignant. Samuel Shaw is just biased. If Michael really goes to the Shaws, I'm worried he'll be mistreated. He hit that old buddy, and if old buddy tries to frame him later, won't Samuel Shaw just side with his own son again? Anyway, let's leave things as they are for now, George Thompson concluded. Let Michael learn from our fourth brother. Second brother, if you have time, you can help teach him too. Hearing the strength of Robert Thompson's feelings, George and Benjamin Thompson finally agreed. When Michael Thompson got home, he immediately sensed the atmosphere was off. His father and 2 uncles were sitting in the living room, mostly in silence. Michael quietly approached Margaret Thompson and whispered, "Mom, what's going on?" Margaret Thompson had overheard everything. "It's about you," she replied. She explained the situation, and Michael finally understood the whole story. So, his family and the Shaw family had this kind of history. He had wondered why, in his previous life, his family never mentioned Samuel Shaw, acting as if they'd completely cut ties. Now it made sense. Michael Thompson smiled and shook his head. While he thought having an artistic titan like Samuel Shaw as a connection would be beneficial, if the man wasn't interested, Michael wasn't about to go kissing up to someone who clearly didn't care. More importantly, there was no need for his father and uncles to swallow their pride because of him. Even without relying on anyone, Michael Thompson was a force to be reckoned with. That was true in his past life, and even more so in this one. Michael decided not to dwell on it anymore and turned smilingly to Margaret Thompson to share the good news about his monthly exam results. "Mom, make something special tonight to celebrate. Your son's grades have skyrocketed." That evening, guests streamed continuously into the Shaw residence. Samuel Shaw stood by the entrance, leaning on his cane, his gaze repeatedly drifting towards the gate. A young woman beside him urged, "Grandpa, why don't you go inside and sit down? Most of the guests have arrived." Samuel Shaw shook his head. "Have George Thompson and the others come today?" he asked. The young woman looked a bit awkward. "From the Thompson family. It seems no one has arrived yet. Was the invitation sent?" Dad was in charge of that. I assume it was sent," she stammered, her eyes shifting evasively. She had personally seen her father, Xavier Shaw, toss the invitation intended for the Thompsons into the trash. Samuel Shaw sighed softly, a hint of disappointment in his eyes. Truthfully, over the years, his son had done many contemptible things. While leaving Samuel utterly disappointed, it also made him gradually realize he had wrongly accused his apprentices back then, causing them to leave in anger. But in his younger years, he had been too proud, unwilling to admit his mistake. Now that he was old, his health failing, his heart had softened. Samuel Shaw had hoped to use this occasion to talk things over with his former apprentices and reconcile the two families. But seeing as they hadn't come, it seemed they still held a grudge over what happened back then. He feared they wouldn't show up at all. Samuel Shaw shook his head helplessly and, supported by his granddaughter, prepared to go inside. Just then, however, a car drove into the Shaw family's courtyard and stopped at the entrance. A young woman stepped out. She was elegantly dressed, her face still holding a touch of youthful innocence, but she was clearly blossoming into a beauty. The granddaughter supporting Samuel Shaw saw the arrival and whispered, "Grandpa, I think it's someone from the Sullivan family." "The Sullivan family? Arthur Sullivan?" Samuel Shaw was momentarily confused. He certainly knew of the Sullivan family. They were the wealthiest in Green Valley, after all, and had even purchased several decorative pieces from him to adorn their home. But while he and Arthur Sullivan were contemporaries, they moved in entirely different circles and had little interaction. He knew the Sullivans had sent a gift registry, but he'd assumed it was merely a polite formality. He hadn't expected them to actually send someone. The young woman who had exited the car, accompanied by a man in a suit, approached them and said somewhat shyly, "Grandpa Samuel, my grandfather asked me to come pay birthday respects. Wishing you many happy returns." This young woman was none other than Olivia Sullivan. Though still a bit bewildered, Samuel Shaw nodded kindly. Yes, please come inside." Olivia Sullivan accompanied Samuel Shaw into the Shaw residence, her eyes immediately scanning the room as if searching for someone. She hadn't told Michael Thompson she was coming today. She wanted it to be a surprise. But after looking around, she couldn't spot Michael Thompson anywhere. She didn't see anyone from the Thompson family at all. Olivia Sullivan was quite puzzled and couldn't help asking, "Grandpa Samuel, hasn't Michael Thompson arrived yet?" Samuel Shaw was even more perplexed. Who was Michael Thompson? Although his apprentices were Thompsons, none were named Michael. He could only reply, "Perhaps he hasn't arrived yet." Just then, Xavier Shaw hurried over, holding a phone. "Dad, there's a call for you." Samuel Shaw nodded and took the phone. "Hello, who is this?" "Samuel, it's Howard Banks." Howard Banks' hearty voice came through the line. Samuel Shaw was surprised. Although he and Howard Banks were both hailed as contemporary national treasure-level masters, one was based in the South and the other in the North. Their private interactions were few, and they weren't particularly close. Why would Howard Banks call to wish him a happy birthday? Growing increasingly confused, Samuel Shaw exchanged a few pleasantries with Howard Banks before the voice on the other end chuckled. "I suppose Michael Thompson is there with you now? You're certainly lucky, finding such a gem in your old age. When I visited Green Valley last time, I was actually tempted to take him as my own apprentice, but once I heard he was your grand apprentice, I dropped the idea. Just for me not stealing your grand apprentice, you owe me drinks next time." Samuel Shaw was stunned. Michael Thompson again? Who on earth was Michael Thompson? Samuel Shaw fell silent. He looked at the young woman from the Sullivan family beside him, then listened to Howard Banks' voice on the phone. He finally understood why these two parties, who clearly had no prior relationship, had come to celebrate his birthday today. Was it all because of that kid, Michael Thompson? Samuel Shaw was quiet for a moment, then said to Howard Banks on the other end, "The Thompsons didn't come." "Michael Thompson didn't come? That's impossible. It's your 70th birthday celebration." Samuel Shaw. "I've never met the kid, Michael Thompson, either. I'll make a call and ask." After saying that, Howard Banks quickly hung up. Samuel Shaw glanced at Olivia Sullivan beside him. She was on the phone with someone, and judging by her stunned expression, she seemed to have heard something shocking. He understood inwardly, but said nothing. About half an hour passed before Howard Banks called back. As soon as he answered, he heard Howard Banks' voice, tight with anger. "Old Samuel Shaw. That's pretty low, isn't it? Not even letting the kid in the door." Samuel Shaw frowned. "What do you mean? Your son got beaten up at the Thompsons' place for nothing. If you ask me, forget saving face. You should have just called the cops and had him arrested." Howard Banks was a relatively upright man with a fiery temper, and his social standing was no lower than Samuel Shaw's, so he spoke without reservation. But Samuel Shaw was baffled. "What's this about my son getting beaten up at the Thompsons?" "Howard Banks, what on earth are you talking about? You didn't know?" Howard Banks had just gotten off the phone with Michael Thompson, who had explained the whole history of the feud between the two families and the recent events. Disgusted by the situation and by Samuel Shaw's self-righteous facade as a master craftsman, he couldn't help but speak his mind. But hearing Samuel Shaw's reaction, it seemed he genuinely didn't know. So, Howard Banks poured out everything Michael Thompson had told him to Samuel Shaw. Samuel Shaw's expression shifted from confusion to shock, and finally, His face darkened completely. He glanced at his son, Xavier Shaw, who was greeting guests nearby, then lowered his voice and exchanged a few more words with Howard Banks. By the end, the misunderstanding between them was cleared up. I sent the Thompsons an invitation, but they never received it. Instead, they sent a gift list over, which I knew nothing about. And Xavier Shaw went to the Thompsons' place, trying to swindle them, nearly cheating them out of $200. For a moment, Samuel Shaw's disappointment in his son was beyond words. On the phone, Howard Banks added, "Old Samuel Shaw, I was showing you respect earlier. But now, that kid Michael Thompson doesn't want anything to do with you. So, what do you think about me taking him as my student?" Samuel Shaw had never met Michael Thompson, but hearing Howard Banks mention him repeatedly, he couldn't help asking, is the boy's talent really that good? Howard Banks replied without hesitation, "If he studies painting with me, in 10 years, he'll be another me." And he just turned 18 this year. This was incredibly high praise. In 10 years, Michael Thompson would only be 28, not even 30. Yet Howard Banks already considered him the next nationally renowned master. Samuel Shaw paused for a moment, then said, "Then you take him." This time, it was Howard Banks' turn to be surprised. "Are you sure you can let him go? I haven't met the boy, and I don't know if his talent is truly as remarkable as you say." Samuel Shaw looked down, watching his left hand, which held his cane, tremble uncontrollably. He gave a bitter smile. "But no matter how talented he is, I can't teach the craft anymore." "What do you mean?" "Parkinson's." Samuel Shaw's answer was calm, but his words carried a deep sadness. Parkinson's is a common illness among the elderly, causing uncontrollable shaking. But for someone like Samuel Shaw, who made his living with his hands, it was a devastating blow. It had gotten progressively worse over the past 2 years. Forget carving. He could barely hold a spoon steady while eating. Often, half his food ended up on the table instead of in his mouth. There was no cure, and it only worsened with time. In another couple of years, he might even have trouble walking. In this condition, how could he possibly teach anyone the art of carving? On the other end of the line, Howard Banks fell silent upon hearing those words. He was considerably younger than Samuel Shaw and still relatively healthy, but hearing about the Parkinson's diagnosis filled him with a sense of empathetic sorrow. No wonder there hadn't been any news of Samuel Shaw's work circulating in their circles for several years. So this was why. The call between Samuel Shaw and Howard Banks, these two nationally renowned masters, quickly ended. Xavier Shaw had been keeping an eye on his father. Seeing him hang up the phone, he hurried over with an obsequious smile. "Dad, finished with your call?" Just as he approached, Samuel Shaw suddenly raised his hand and slapped him hard across the face. Smack! The slap instantly drew the attention of all the guests present. For a moment, the entire living room fell silent. Xavier Shaw was stunned, clutching his face, speechless for a long moment. "Dad, how could I have raised such an animal like you?" Samuel Shaw angrily slammed his cane on the floor. "The Thompsons should have called the police and had you thrown in jail." After saying this, he turned angrily and stormed off. "Michael, I'm out. Almost at your building. I'm right here at the street entrance. Come on over." Michael Thompson was sitting at the entrance to the road near the foot of his mountain, talking on the phone with Olivia Sullivan. This was the second call between him and Olivia Sullivan tonight. The previous call had been from Olivia Sullivan when she couldn't find Michael Thompson at the birthday celebration. Michael Thompson had been quite surprised to receive her call. He hadn't expected Olivia Sullivan would go to pay tribute for Samuel Shaw's birthday. Just after Olivia Sullivan hung up, Howard Banks, whom he hadn't spoken to in a long time, called him too, also asking why he hadn't gone to Samuel Shaw's birthday celebration. Michael Thompson was a bit bewildered by it all, but explained the reason truthfully. Now, after hanging up with Olivia Sullivan, he played on his phone for a bit until a car pulled up nearby. Olivia Sullivan got out of the car, and as soon as she saw Michael Thompson, she smiled sweetly and jogged over to him. "Michael." Reaching him, she looked up, pouting slightly, and said, "If I had known you weren't coming today, I wouldn't have come either. Couldn't you have just asked me beforehand if I was going?" Trying to surprise me?" "No, that's not it. I wasn't thinking that at all." Olivia Sullivan blushed, offering a trio of haughty denials. Michael Thompson couldn't help but smile and reached out to take her hand. Olivia Sullivan shyly pulled back a little, but after cautiously glancing around and confirming no one was watching, she let Michael Thompson hold her hand. Michael Thompson said, "Even though I didn't go, you didn't have to leave so early, did you? You were representing your grandfather. After all, it would have been better to stay a bit longer." Olivia Sullivan shook her head. "No, I didn't leave early. Everyone else left, so I left too." "This early?" "Yeah, I don't know what happened, but the old Mr. Shaw suddenly lost his temper, slapped his son, and then stormed off. We didn't know what was going on, but the Shaws asked us all to leave then. Olivia Sullivan briefly explained what happened that evening, then asked curiously. Before the old man left, he yelled at his son, saying something like, "The Thompsons should have called the police and had you arrested." The Thompsons, he mentioned. That wouldn't be your family, would it? Olivia Sullivan briefly explained what happened tonight and asked curiously. Before that old man left, he cursed out his son, saying something like the Thompsons should call the cops and have you arrested. The Thompson family, he mentioned. That wouldn't be your family, would it? Olivia Sullivan wanted to hear Michael Thompson's thoughts, but Michael Thompson himself was a bit confused right now. Samuel Shaw's son. That must be Xavier Shaw, the one I beat up last time, right? But that happened quite a while ago. Why would Samuel Shaw suddenly blow up on his 70th birthday today? Could it be he only just found out? Did someone deliberately tell him today? What's their goal? To ruin his 70th birthday? Michael Thompson's guesses were mostly accurate, but he didn't know it was because he had told Howard Banks, who then informed Samuel Shaw. A few days after Samuel Shaw's 70th birthday, he actually brought Xavier Shaw to the Thompson family home to apologize. Michael Thompson was home that day and finally saw the old man. He looked like any ordinary elderly person, quite small and thin, needing a cane and someone's support to walk. However, Michael Thompson didn't get a chance to speak with him. Samuel Shaw spent a long time in the study with Michael's elders before leaving. Before he left, Samuel Shaw saw Michael, nodded, and said, "A fine boy." After that day, the relationship between the two families seemed to thaw considerably, but no one mentioned Michael Thompson going to the Shaw family to learn their craft. Michael Thompson had also put the matter aside, not caring much about it anymore, and continued his monotonous routine, studying during class, studying after school, practically studying even in his sleep, until the last weekend of March. It was a Saturday, and Michael Thompson was taking a rare day off to hang out with Jake Wilson at the Wilsons' house. Aunt Maggie had invited him to stay for dinner, but he hadn't been there long when Uncle Wilson told him to go back home, saying there was something important waiting for him. Michael Thompson had no choice but to head back. But when he walked through his front door, he was stunned to find his parents in the living room entertaining two unexpected guests. Ms. Evans? Professor Gibson. This Ms. Evans was Michael Thompson's art class advisor. If it were just Ms. Evans, Michael Thompson wouldn't have been surprised. He would have just assumed it was a teacher from school for a parent-teacher conference. But this Professor Gibson wasn't a teacher from Oakwood High School, but rather Howard Banks, the honorary president, visiting professor at the Rhode Island School of Design, and a nationally treasured master artist from China. Howard Banks and Ms. Evans. How did these two seemingly unrelated people end up visiting his house together? Ms. Evans smiled teasingly. "Michael, aren't you happy to see me making a home visit? Welcome, welcome." Michael Thompson was still trying to figure out the situation. He started walking toward the kitchen. "I'll go wash some fruit." "Mom, is the fruit in the fridge?" "I'll wash it. You sit and talk with your teachers." Margaret Thompson took over for Michael, making him sit on the sofa with the guests. Howard Banks was discussing something with Robert Thompson and gave Michael Thompson a slight nod when he saw him. Robert Thompson said, "But we should still hear the boy's opinion." Ms. Evans persuaded, "Mr. Thompson, this is truly a rare opportunity. You know, our school doesn't normally get chances like this. The faculty at Rhode Island School of Design Preparatory is much stronger than ours. But he's never lived away from home, and now suddenly he'd be going to school in Boston. When he goes to college, he'll have to study away from home anyway. This is just a year and a half earlier. And you don't need to worry about his living situation. Rhode Island School of Design Preparatory has dormitories." Ms. Evans continued persuading Robert Thompson while explaining the situation to Michael Thompson. It took Michael Thompson a while to understand. Apparently, Oakwood High School had gained a spot for a student to attend a special art program, the preparatory program for the Rhode Island School of Design, and this spot had, coincidentally, fallen to him. But seeing Howard Banks, who had come all the way from Boston to Green Valley in Jiang Province specifically, Michael Thompson knew this spot was clearly meant for him. Ms. Evans was also trying to persuade Michael Thompson. "Michael Thompson, didn't you always want to get into a top art school like our ISD? You should really seize this opportunity. If you go to Rhode Island School of Design Preparatory, it will be much easier to get into Rhode Island School of Design through their own admissions process. What do you think?" Michael Thompson, however, looked at Howard Banks. "Will you be teaching me personally?" Howard Banks smiled and nodded. "You're a sharp one. But last time, you didn't seem to imply that." "Well, you are Samuel Shaw's grand disciple, after all. I heard from your family that you prefer carving anyway. But Samuel Shaw can't teach you anymore. He has Parkinson's disease, so I came back. Howard Banks paused for a moment, then smiled. Painting is also very interesting. Michael Thompson looked at Robert Thompson. Robert Thompson said, "You could decide for yourself. Your mother is a bit reluctant to see you study so far away, but it's going to happen sooner or later." Michael Thompson asked, "Do we still have any smoked meat at home?" Howard Banks burst out laughing at this, waving his hand dismissively. "All right, no need for a tuition gift. Samuel Shaw comes from the old school. He cares about those traditions. I'm a school teacher. I don't go in for that. From now on, you're my student. That's enough." And just like that, the matter was settled. Even after Howard Banks had left, completely satisfied, Michael Thompson felt quite emotional. After all the twists and turns, he had unexpectedly ended up becoming Howard Banks' disciple. He could imagine that studying under Howard Banks would inevitably mean learning Chinese painting, and perhaps Banks would even groom him as the next successor to the Hudson River School within the Chinese painting tradition. But in reality, he was definitely more interested in carving, perhaps due to his upbringing surrounded by it, or maybe to make up for the regret of not mastering the craft in his past life. However, Michael Thompson quickly came to terms with this. He would learn painting from Howard Banks, but he could also learn carving from the system simultaneously. It wouldn't interfere. Only children have to choose. He was already 18, an adult, and the adult way was I want it all. However, Howard Banks was going to take Michael Thompson to Boston. In the next couple of days, after packing his bags, he would be leaving with Howard Banks for Boston. He wondered how Olivia Sullivan would react when she found out. Michael Thompson decided to see Olivia Sullivan before he left, since the next time they could meet wouldn't be until summer break. What? That guy Michael Thompson is transferring to a school in Boston. When Claire Evans heard the news from Olivia Sullivan, her reaction was even bigger than Olivia Sullivan's own. She complained, "Seriously, that guy? Does this mean you two are going to be in a long-distance relationship now?" Olivia Sullivan blushed deeply and argued softly, "It's not long distance. We aren't actually dating yet. Have you held hands? Have you kissed? If you're not dating, then it's okay if he finds another girlfriend?" "No." Claire Evans threw up her hands. "See?" Olivia Sullivan couldn't win the argument. She haphazardly stuck a hairpin in her hair and started heading out. "I'm not talking to you anymore. Michael Thompson is leaving the day after tomorrow, and I need to see him." "Why are you in such a hurry to see him? Come back, your hair is still a mess. And your socks are on backwards." Claire Evans knew her best friend wouldn't say it, but she was clearly flustered. Resigned, Claire pulled Olivia Sullivan back, helped her tie her hair, and made sure she looked her best to go see the boy she liked. 2 days later, Michael Thompson stood at the train station entrance, suitcase in tow, saying goodbye to his family. "Do you have everything? Didn't forget your ID, did you?" Margaret Thompson fussed, repeatedly asking Michael if he'd forgotten anything. It was the first time her son had been away from her for so long, and although she knew he'd be back in a few months for summer vacation, she couldn't help but feel emotional. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "Mom, don't be so dramatic," Michael consoled her. "It's not like I'm dying. I'll be back in 2 months." "You cheeky boy," Margaret said, a smile breaking through her tears. Robert Thompson was also reluctant to see his son go, but didn't show it. He simply handed Michael a cell phone. "I bought this for you. Call home often and don't worry your mother, okay?" Michael accepted the phone. "I know, Dad. Now, when you're away from home and your mom and I aren't there, listen to John, all right? I know. Take care of yourself." Yeah. The exchange between father and son was simple and heartfelt. Michael spoke to his aunts and uncles, and then Jake Wilson arrived, looking sentimental. "Michael, don't forget about your bro." It was a Monday, a school day, but Jake had skipped class to see Michael off. "Don't be stupid." Michael laughed, opening his arms and hugging his friend. They clapped each other on the back. After saying goodbye to everyone, Michael looked around the train station, a flicker of disappointment in his eyes. Alice Sullivan wasn't there. It was understandable. It was a school day after all. Jake had only been able to come because his uncle had called his teacher, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Wilson, knowing how close Jake and Michael were, had given him permission to leave. But it would have been harder for Alice Sullivan to get excused. Michael knew this, and he had already said goodbye to Alice over the weekend. Still, he felt a pang of sadness not seeing her. Howard Banks checked his watch and said, "Michael, it's almost time. Let's go inside." "Okay." Michael composed himself, said his final goodbyes, and followed Howard into the station. He kept looking back, and his family remained at the entrance until he was out of sight. Howard Banks remarked, "Your family is enviable. It's rare to see such a close-knit group. Is it? Isn't that what family is supposed to be like?" "I suppose so." The two men exchanged a few light-hearted words as they rode the escalator to the second floor. Once upstairs, Michael glanced around and saw a girl standing beneath the large departure board. He froze, then grinned. "John, wait for me a second." Before Howard Banks could ask what was happening, Michael Thompson grabbed his suitcase and hurried off. Alice. Alice Sullivan, who had been standing near the escalator, heard her name and turned around. Seeing Michael, her face lit up. He stopped in front of her. "What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be in class?" Alice Sullivan quickly put a finger to her lips. "I skipped class. To see me off?" "Yeah." This was the first time Alice Sullivan, a dedicated student, had ever skipped class. Michael Thompson was touched. "But how did you know which train I was taking?" "I waited a bit," Alice Sullivan said, avoiding his gaze. Michael Thompson noticed the half-eaten breakfast bag in her hand. "You've been waiting since this morning?" Alice Sullivan didn't answer, looking away. "Silly. You could have called me. You would have told me not to come," Alice Sullivan said, pouting. "I asked you before. So how did you get in? Didn't they check tickets at the entrance?" "I bought a ticket to the next city. Pretty smart, huh?" Alice Sullivan looked down shyly. "I want to spend a little more time with you, until you boarded the train." A warmth spread through Michael Thompson's chest. He leaned closer and whispered, "Can I hug you?" Alice Sullivan blushed and glanced around, but didn't object. Michael Thompson put his arms around her. She was small, and this time, she hugged him back, her hands gripping his jacket. She buried her face in his chest and began to cry. "Can I go with you?" "It's not necessary. We're starting our senior year soon, and you'd have to adjust to a new school," Michael Thompson soothed her. "Besides, I'm at an art-focused high school. You wouldn't be at the same school, even if you came to Boston. And I'll be back soon. Plus, didn't we agree to go to college in Boston together? You better study hard, or I might get into Rhode Island School of Design, and you won't get into Harvard. I couldn't handle you having to repeat a year." He lowered his head and whispered in her ear, "Remember on graduation day, I'm getting promoted from boyfriend in waiting to boyfriend. You'll be my girlfriend then. No takebacks. Here, pinky swear." Michael held out his pinky finger. Alice Sullivan stood on tiptoe and kissed him. A moment later, they pulled apart. Alice Sullivan wiped her tears, her face flushed. Sealed with a kiss. No takebacks. Michael Thompson touched his lips, stunned. It was the first time Alice Sullivan had been so forward. On the train, Michael Thompson and Howard Banks were headed to Shanghai. High-speed rail hadn't yet reached Jiangsu province in 2009. Construction had only begun in April and wouldn't be completed until October 2010. So they had to take a regular train to Shanghai and then transfer to the high-speed rail for Boston. Throughout the journey, Michael Thompson kept touching his lips, grinning to himself. Howard Banks noticed and smiled knowingly. That girl, he realized, was Arthur Sullivan's granddaughter. She was certainly beautiful. His apprentice had good taste. He had initially wondered why his old friend Arthur Sullivan had been so eager to recommend Michael Thompson to him. Now he understood. It was because Michael was his granddaughter's future husband. Youth is wasted on the young. Howard Banks murmured, closing his eyes for a nap, leaving Michael Thompson to his love-struck reverie. Time flew by. A year and a half had passed since Michael Thompson left for Boston. He had initially thought he'd be home every winter and summer break, but apart from a few days during New Year's, he hadn't returned to Green Valley. Even his sophomore summer break was spent in Boston, filled with art competitions Howard Banks urged him to enter. From a national youth calligraphy and painting competition to the Chi Baisher Cup, the Yixing Cup, and the Shuyan Cup, the competitions escalated from student events to prestigious national contests. Before he knew it, Boston's art scene was abuzz with the news of a painting prodigy mentored by a renowned master. Michael was becoming a rising star. Thanks to these accolades, Michael was practically guaranteed early admission to the Rhode Island School of Design, RISD. His portfolio was simply outstanding. All he needed now was a decent SAT score, which wasn't a concern. Despite his infrequent attendance at his new high school, he could easily ace the test and get into any Ivy League university. Michael sent trophies and medals home, much to Margaret Thompson's delight. She couldn't resist bragging about her son's achievements back in their hometown. Michael knew his mother. She loved to show off. She had once declared that if he got into a top university, she would parade through town for 3 days, broadcasting the news and throwing a huge feast. Now, she practically wore his awards like badges of honor, eager to show them off to anyone she met. During their last phone call, she excitedly told him that the local TV station had even come to interview her. Meanwhile, the family business was booming. The mine was in full operation, and, as Michael had predicted, it was a quartz mine. The quality of the extracted stones, foam green, light green, and blue flower, was exceptionally high, and the quantity substantial. They were worth a small fortune. Michael's father and uncles had even put aside their jade carving business to focus on the mine. Everything seemed to be flourishing. While Michael's future at RISD was secure, others were feeling the pressure as the SATs approached. Even Emily Thompson had buckled down, hoping to score well enough to get into a decent second-tier university and eventually land a job at Bank of America or in the civil service. Jake Wilson had been less in touch with Michael lately, preoccupied with studying for the Boston Teachers College entrance exams, a respectable school, but one that would require significant effort on Jake's part. Only Olivia Sullivan maintained their daily calls. Even when exhausted from late-night studying, she insisted on hearing Michael's voice before going to sleep, even if it was just to exchange good nights. Michael sometimes worried that the calls were affecting her rest, but she was adamant. Through Olivia, Michael also learned something surprising. Claire Evans wasn't planning to study abroad. This was unexpected, as Claire's parents lived overseas, and she had always lived with her grandparents. In his past life, she had skipped the SATs and gone straight abroad. This time, something had changed. Olivia was thrilled, but Michael couldn't help but wonder if Claire had developed feelings for Jake and didn't want to leave him. Being in Boston, Michael hadn't been keeping up with Jake and Claire's relationship, unsure of how far things had progressed. Something had definitely happened, though. At least Claire had given Jake a birthday present, according to Olivia. 1 week before the SATs, the rhythmic clang of chisel against stone echoed from a townhouse in Boston. Perched on a stepladder, Michael, clad in a leather apron and wearing a mask, worked on a massive stone. A beautiful woman emerged from the house, holding a child. "Michael," she called, "Samuel wants you to come in for dinner." Michael pulled off his mask and grinned. "Elizabeth, I'll be there in a bit." Almost finished. Elizabeth Shaw, Howard Banks' wife, looked barely over 30 but was actually 43. Howard was in his early 60s. Michael had heard that Elizabeth was a RISD alumna and now taught there. The child she held, a chubby, rosy-cheeked 5-year-old, was their only child, Daisy, and the apple of their eyes. The townhouse, Howard's ancestral home, was where the family lived. After arriving in Boston, Michael hadn't stayed in the school dorms. Howard had taken him in. The house was close to school, and Elizabeth dropped Michael off on her way to take Daisy to kindergarten. Leaning against the doorframe, Elizabeth watched Michael with fascination. "No wonder Samuel calls you a prodigy. You couldn't sculpt like this, and you learned it all from books?" "Just messing around," Michael fibbed, carefully examining the stone. It was an enormous agate, its size and quality record-breaking. In his past life, it had ended up with a stone merchant who commissioned a nationally renowned sculptor to carve it. The resulting masterpiece, a depiction of Pangu separating heaven and earth, won numerous awards and later sold at auction for a rumored $120 million. This time around, Michael, having calculated the stone's unearthing, had traveled back to Green Valley and intercepted it at the Thompson Workshop mine. The price was a steal, as no one believed such a large, 6-foot-tall agate could contain anything of value. The miners had initially planned to crush it and sell it as scrap. Michael had acquired the stone almost 6 months ago and had finally nearly finished carving it, just needing to polish and wax it. "I'm almost envious of the girl who's getting this," Elizabeth said with a smile. Michael chuckled, gathered his tools, and carried the ladder inside for dinner. Lunch was a simple, home-cooked spaghetti bolognese. Howard Banks twirled pasta onto his fork, occasionally pausing to pop a clove of garlic from his left hand into his mouth. "Michael," he said to Ethan Thompson, "your mom's called several times this week. The SATs are next week. Shouldn't you be heading back?" Ethan, though studying in Boston as a sponsored student, had to return to his registered residence for the exam. He politely set down his chopsticks. "Maybe in a couple of days. I want to finish the stone carving in the courtyard before I go." "Don't mess around with that now," Howard scolded his apprentice sternly. "Worry about it after the SATs." Ethan chuckled. "Samuel, it's fine. Getting the minimum score is a piece of cake. It won't hold me back. Even so, try for a decent score. Once you're in college, it'll give me more options for getting you into the right program." Howard had plans for Ethan's future. He also had a slight ulterior motive. He wasn't thrilled about Ethan's focus on sculpting. Art was a demanding field. Dedicating a lifetime to one craft was no guarantee of mastery. Though Ethan showed exceptional talent in both painting and sculpting, excelling in both simultaneously, Howard believed that focusing on one could lead to even greater heights. For example, this year Ethan had only competed in the Emerging Artist category for the Cheebyshire Award. He'd won, of course, but Howard felt that if Ethan concentrated solely on painting, he could compete directly with established masters for the nation's highest painting prize. He didn't expect him to win the grand prize, but placing in the top 3 would catapult him to the ranks of the youngest first-class painters. It was the classic ambition of a mentor for his protege. Ethan was the most talented apprentice he'd ever taken, and Howard had placed his highest hopes on him. He didn't deny Ethan's sculpting talent, which was potentially equal to his painting, but Ethan was studying under him, a master of Chinese painting, not his great-uncle Samuel Shaw, a sculptor. Naturally, he had some reservations about Ethan's divided attention. Howard's words, however, drew immediate disapproval from Aaron Shaw. "You old man, always so much to say. Can't the boy have other hobbies? At Michael Thompson's age, your previous apprentices hadn't achieved half as much, and you're still not satisfied?" Howard, chastised by his wife, stammered, "I wasn't saying anything bad. It's all for his own good. Can you force knowledge into someone's head?" Other kids Michael Thompson's age are glued to their computers playing games. Michael Thompson paints every day and still finds time to learn other things. Such a diligent child. If you, Samuel Shaw, don't appreciate him, I, Aaron Shaw, certainly do. Aaron's tone softened as she turned to Ethan Thompson. "Don't mind your Samuel Shaw. Give me your bowl. There's more pasta in the kitchen." "Thank you, Aaron," Ethan said, grinning as he handed her the bowl. Ethan stayed in Boston for 2 more days, polishing and waxing his sculpture. He looked at the finished piece. The sculpted woman's face radiated joy, and Ethan's own eyes softened. The Thompson family, under the tutelage of Jake Wilson, specialized in rolling hills landscapes. But Ethan's first piece was a figurative sculpture. This massive agate stone had, in his past life, been carved into a depiction of Pan Goose separating heaven and earth, a colossal figure with hands pushing the sky and feet planted on the earth, his fierce expression radiating power. But in this life, Ethan poured all his tenderness into the stone. It was still a human figure, but this time it was a young woman cradling a baby in her arms, her lowered gaze full of happiness. Unlike traditional carving techniques, this leaned towards a modern, realistic style, as if a jade figurine had come to life. Ethan's skills were now honed, and this was his first independently completed large-scale work. It was hard to say whether it compared to the master who carved Pan Gu in his previous life. This rare stone, once destined for a sky-high price, might now be undervalued in his hands. But Ethan didn't care. He gently caressed the sculpture's face, then the baby's head. This was his future wife, his future child. It was the image of Alice Sullivan holding their newborn, etched in his memory from the moment he first saw her in the delivery room. He had poured his longing and hopes for the future into this piece. A system notification rang in his ears, pulling him back to reality. "Congratulations, host. You have unlocked sculpting skill, master level. You have acquired the master level skill, transference, sculpting. Transference. Your works embody your thoughts, allowing every viewer to feel the emotions you've infused within. Note 1. This skill cannot be upgraded. Note 2. Currently, only your sculpting works exhibit this skill's effects." Ethan stared at the system prompt, puzzled. Between painting and sculpting, his foundation and achievements in painting should have been higher. He'd had a strong painting base in his past life, specializing in Western oil painting. In this life, studying under Howard Banks, a master of Chinese painting, and aided by the system's dream training, his painting skills were undoubtedly impressive. They were certainly no less than those of most so-called masters, especially in oils. Yet, he hadn't unlocked the master-level title for painting, while sculpting, a skill learned in this life, had reached that level. He wondered about the system's evaluation criteria. Then, his gaze fell back onto the completed sculpture. "Perhaps my painting skills are sufficient, but I lacked a piece that truly embodies my emotions and thoughts." A flicker of understanding crossed his face as he lowered his head in contemplation. Not far away, on the veranda, Aaron Shaw and Howard Banks watched Ethan Thompson standing in the courtyard. As he touched his work with a complex expression, Aaron Shaw nudged her husband, startled. "Huang, tell me, do you artists, are your minds different from normal people?" Howard nearly snorted with indignation. "What kind of talk is that?" "Well, look, I saw this foreign film once, where a painter fell in love with the woman in his painting." Aaron's expression was a mix of bewilderment and concern. She discreetly pointed towards Ethan Thompson. "Look at Michael Thompson, that look. It's unsettling." Howard scoffed. "Watch fewer silly movies. That doesn't happen in real life. We've been married for how many years now? Have I ever been abnormal? You ran off to the Gobi Desert for over 2 weeks last year for inspiration. Was that normal? You're practically 1 foot in the grave already." "That's not the same thing." Howard muttered, frustrated. He knew, however, that there was no such concern with Ethan Thompson. The kid had even managed to win over Arthur Sullivan's granddaughter. "Mom, I'll leave that piece to you. How much is the insurance?" "I'll get it to you now." At the Wilson family home, in Michael's room, Elizabeth was helping him pack. He was heading back to Green Valley for the SATs, leaving today. The agate stone sculpture in the courtyard, weighing several hundred pounds, was impossible for Michael to take with him. He had to entrust it to Elizabeth, who would arrange for its shipment through a logistics company. Elizabeth was well-versed in this, knowing many reliable companies that specialized in transporting high-value items. The agate sculpture, priceless to Michael, was insured for a hefty sum, which Elizabeth had covered. Elizabeth smiled and waved him off. "Don't be silly, Michael. Just go. Samuel's car is waiting outside." Michael, not one for formalities, decided he'd find some beautiful material and make Elizabeth a pendant when he returned, as a small token of gratitude. Once they finished packing, Michael lugged his suitcase, a backpack slung over his shoulder, while Elizabeth carried several beautifully wrapped boxes of supplements for his family. "Mom, you shouldn't have. This is too much." "Nonsense," Elizabeth replied. "Your parents entrusted you to us, and we want them to know you're well taken care of." Michael couldn't argue with her. She pressed the packages into his hands and watched him get into Howard's car. Michael flew back to Green Valley. Elizabeth, doting on him, didn't want him to endure a long train journey with transfers, so she bought him a plane ticket. However, due to Green Valley's unique terrain, it didn't have an airport. Michael could only fly to the neighboring Riverside city and then take a train back to Pine Ridge County. At Boston Airport, Howard dropped Michael off at the gate. Elizabeth hadn't come. She had to take care of Daisy Shaw back home. Howard watched his apprentice, burdened with a backpack, a suitcase, and a large bag overflowing with supplement boxes, and grumbled. "Elizabeth went overboard. Why pack so much? You'll be back in a couple of months." Michael chuckled. "Master, it just shows how much she cares." "You sure know how to charm the women," Howard said with a playful glare, before adding, "You haven't been home in a while. Enjoy yourself. You can come back after school starts." Michael was surprised. "Master, really?" "Of course," Howard replied, though he felt a pang of regret. He hadn't intended for Michael to be away so long, believing every day wasted was a loss for his talented student. But Elizabeth had scolded him for pushing Michael too hard over the past year and a half, not letting him go home for summer break, only allowing a 10-day trip for New Year's. She insisted Michael deserved a proper break after the SATs. Howard wondered if he had been too demanding, though Michael never complained, often painting tirelessly without supervision, sometimes to the point of exhaustion. He worried this dedication would take a toll. After much deliberation, Howard had agreed to let Michael enjoy a long break at home, returning only when college started. He regained his stern expression. "But don't just play around. I expect 2 paintings a month. I'll check them when you return, and if you slack off, you'll face the consequences." Michael grinned and nodded. "Understood, master. All right, go. Call your mom when you get home and let her know you arrived safely." After their farewell at the gate, Michael boarded the plane. Meanwhile, at Oakwood High School in Pine Ridge County, a tense silence filled the senior classroom as students diligently studied. The whirring fan did little to alleviate the stifling heat and mounting anxiety. A sign on the back blackboard read, 5 days until the SAT. Motivational posters plastered the doorways proclaimed messages like "study till you drop" and "1 year of hard work, a lifetime of happiness." Even the most indolent students were focused, hoping to improve their scores, even by a single point. Olivia meticulously worked through past SAT papers from 1995 to 2008, covering every subject from every province. This was standard practice in Oakwood's advanced classes. Encouragingly, Olivia's scores on the previous year's Jiangsu province paper and 3 mock exams were consistently high enough for Harvard. Barring any mishaps, she should be fine. Still, she couldn't shake off her nerves. As the SATs loomed closer, her worries intensified. She couldn't help but wonder what she would do if she didn't get into Harvard. Would she repeat the year or settle for other Ivy League universities in Boston? Before confessing her feelings to Michael, she wouldn't have hesitated to retake the exam. But now, she was uncertain. Olivia lightly slapped her cheeks. "Stop thinking negative thoughts," she muttered. "Michael is working hard too. I have to keep going." She clenched her fists, giving herself a silent pep talk, and picked up her pen, ready to dive back into the sea of practice questions. Just then, her phone vibrated in her pocket, startling her. Thankfully, it was a self-study period with no teacher present. She resisted checking the message until class ended. When she finally glanced at the screen, her eyes widened. "I'm back," the text from Michael read. After arriving in Pine Ridge County, Michael had sent Olivia a message. He hadn't planned to tell her, worried it might distract her from studying. He'd intended to wait until after the SATs, just 5 days away. But the familiarity of his hometown compelled him to reach out. Olivia didn't reply immediately, and Michael, knowing she was likely in class, put his phone away and left the train station. As he stepped outside, he heard his mother's enthusiastic yell, "Son!" Looking up, he saw the family car parked across the street, with Margaret Thompson and Robert Thompson waving excitedly. A smile spread across his face as he dragged his suitcase toward them. "Dad, Mom," he called out, "I'm home." "Whoa, Dad, new car." Michael Thompson eyed the vehicle Robert Thompson had pulled up in, circling it with interest. Robert Thompson used to drive a car worth about 100,000 yuan, and he'd had it for 7 or 8 years. But this new one was an Audi SUV, probably costing 4 or 500,000. You see, Robert Thompson was a practical man, or rather, someone who hated to spend money on things like cars. If something worked, it worked. So, for him to get such a nice new car, it must mean the family's mining business had been doing really well these past couple of years. Robert Thompson chuckled as he took Michael's suitcase and put it in the trunk. "Once you're done with the SATs and get your driver's license, you can have my old car," he said. "Dad, couldn't you give me a new one?" Michael Thompson grumbled, clearly dissatisfied. Margaret Thompson playfully tweaked his ear and scolded with a laugh. "How old are you? Wanting a new car already? Wait till you graduate college." The family piled into the car, laughing and chatting. Margaret Thompson asked Michael about his life over there, while simultaneously complaining that his teacher, Samuel Shaw, was too heartless, not even letting him come home for the holidays. Robert Thompson, behind the wheel, tried to reassure his wife, telling her not to worry so much. "When I was young, I went through way more hardship than Michael ever has. What's wrong with white-collar workers these days experiencing a little hardship? Mr. Gibson is willing to take Michael, and he's teaching him so diligently. We should be grateful. What's there for you to worry about, you old worrywart?" Margaret Thompson bristled. "Can't I worry about my own son? Or is Michael not your son?" "Huh?" Michael Thompson hadn't seen his parents bickering like this in a while, and he felt a pang of nostalgia. He quickly smoothed things over. "Mom, Mr. Shaw and Mrs. Shaw are really good to me. Mrs. Shaw even had me bring back a lot of gifts for you guys. Mr. Shaw also said I could stay home longer, until college starts." "That's great." Margaret Thompson beamed, her eyes crinkling into slits when she heard Michael could stay home until school started. She then added, reminding him, "But you still need to behave yourself at their place. Be respectful, you know?" "Mom, I know," Michael Thompson replied, wanting to change the subject. "Never mind that, Mom. I want barbecue ribs." "Okay, Mom will buy them." Margaret Thompson agreed readily, already eagerly planning to cook up a feast for her son that evening. In the following days, Michael Thompson didn't meet up with Olivia Sullivan. They only had one phone call that lasted over an hour. They talked a lot, but it was like they said nothing at all. All that mattered was that they both had a great time chatting. Finally, Olivia Sullivan made a promise to Michael. "Michael, after the SATs. I'll be waiting for you." "Yeah, see you after the SATs," Michael Thompson replied with a smile. And so, the last 5 days before the SATs, filled with agonizing anticipation for all SAT takers, finally arrived. "Honey, don't be nervous about the exam, okay? Whether you do well or not, Mom won't blame you. Have you checked if you've got everything? ID, admission ticket, no. 2 pencils, eraser." In the Thompson family's living room on the morning of the SATs, Margaret Thompson was nagging endlessly. Michael Thompson sighed in exasperation. "Yes, I have it all, Mom. You've reminded me to check 7 or 8 times already this morning." Margaret Thompson retorted, "I'm just worried you might forget something. This is the SATs. What if you get nervous and leave something behind?" Robert Thompson chimed in, chuckling. "I think you're even more nervous than our son. Anyone who didn't know better would think you're the one taking the SATs." I'm not nervous. Why would I be nervous?" Margaret Thompson stammered, her voice betraying her anxiety, but she still stubbornly retorted. But in reality, she had been on edge since early morning, and the night before she tossed and turned, unable to sleep. In contrast, Michael Thompson, the one actually taking the SATs, wasn't nervous at all. He'd slept soundly the night before, and this morning he'd had to be practically dragged out of bed by Margaret Thompson, otherwise he could have slept in longer. Margaret Thompson looked at him and felt a surge of irritation. "Why aren't you nervous at all?" she grumbled. It was infuriating, wasn't it? Just moments ago, she was telling Michael not to be nervous, but now she was complaining that he wasn't nervous enough. Michael Thompson knew better than to argue with a woman, especially a woman in menopause. He could only say, "Mom, I've already been accepted through the early admission program. I just need to pass the SATs, which is a piece of cake for your son, right? The SATs are just a formality. Margaret Thompson was still unconvinced. But what if you don't even pass the undergraduate admission line? Comrade Margaret Thompson, Michael Thompson said, his eyebrows furrowing, even if you're my mom, you can't curse me like that. His mock exams in senior year had never scored below the admission line for Ivy League universities in previous years. Failing to pass the undergraduate line would be ridiculous. Margaret Thompson, ever the worrier, continued, what if you faint in the exam room? What if you hand in the paper without writing your name? I've seen news stories about kids like that every year. Michael Thompson just gave her a speechless look. Robert Thompson finally couldn't stand it anymore. All right, stop adding to his stress. He wasn't even nervous to begin with, and now you're trying to make him anxious, huh? It's getting late, let's go. Uncle Ben Thompson and his family are probably already waiting for us. This year, Michael Thompson wasn't the only one in the Thompson family taking the SATs. Emily Thompson was too. The two families were riding to school in the same car. Thankfully, Robert Thompson had bought a 7-seater SUV, so everyone fit. In the car, Michael Thompson noticed Emily Thompson was constantly looking at a small notebook filled with English vocabulary words. He reminded her, the first section this morning is verbal. Emily Thompson glared at him, then silently put the notebook away. She took out a small pill bottle from her bag, poured one out, popped it in her mouth, then offered the bottle to Michael. Want one? Performance-enhancing drugs? Vitamin B. My teacher said taking one of these before the exam can help with nerves. Michael Thompson chuckled softly. He figured it probably wouldn't do much. But if Emily Thompson's teacher said so, it was probably just to give the students some psychological comfort, to ease their nerves before the exam. He didn't refuse, took one, and popped it in his mouth. It's just vitamins anyway, a few wouldn't hurt. If you were to rank the difficulty of the SATs across the country, Jiang Province would undoubtedly be hell-level hard. Michael Thompson couldn't understand why. Even though they were all Chinese, one province would have exam questions that were ridiculously hard and, on top of that, an even higher admission score requirement. This year's math section was especially outrageously difficult. After the math section, Michael Thompson hadn't even left the school gates yet, and he already saw many students on the road who were bursting into tears as soon as they walked out of the classroom. He, on the other hand, was pretty relaxed, figuring he'd done okay on the exam. At least he'd finished all the questions, and he should have gotten most of the points he was supposed to get. He couldn't solve the last, really tough problem completely, but he wrote down some steps, so he should still get some points for that. Good enough. He wasn't aiming to be the top scorer in the province anyway. Wonder how little Olivia did on the exam. Hope she wasn't so overwhelmed she cried. Michael Thompson suddenly thought of Olivia Sullivan and felt a slight urge to go see her. That afternoon, Michael Thompson arrived at school a little early for the exam and waited outside Olivia Sullivan's testing room. He spotted her from a distance. Her classroom was on the first floor, and she was sitting on the edge of a flower bed, diligently reviewing her science notes for the afternoon exam. She seemed to be in good spirits, apparently not fazed by the morning's math test. Relieved, Michael was about to leave when Olivia seemed to sense his presence and looked up in his direction. Busted. Instead of hiding, Michael confidently gave her a thumbs up. Olivia's eyes crinkled into crescents as she smiled and returned the gesture. The exchange was brief but heartwarming. The Jiangsu Province College entrance exam, unlike other provinces, took 2.5 days. Jiangsu included an elective module required for Ivy League universities. The final admission score combined the general exam results and the elective module score. Students aiming for regular universities didn't need to take the elective, and vocational schools only considered the scores for Chinese, math, and English. Although Michael was an art student, he also needed the elective module for his Ivy League aspirations. Since he'd spent the latter half of high school in Boston, where there was no such module, Howard Banks had arranged for a tutor to help him prepare for 2 months. On the third day, the students finally finished their high school exams. They stayed at school for the afternoon graduation ceremony. As the principal delivered his speech, the graduates were lost in their thoughts. Some fretted over exam performance. Others felt a sense of relief and freedom, while some were saddened by the impending separation from classmates and teachers. No one noticed 2 figures missing from the graduating class: Michael Thompson from the art program and Jake Wilson from the advanced placement class. Their absence wasn't discovered until after the principal's speech, when the graduates returned to their classrooms. "Where's Jake?" Claire Evans asked Olivia Sullivan, puzzled, when she returned to the classroom and didn't see Jake in his seat. Olivia shook her head. Maybe he went to the restroom. Claire didn't think much of it as their homeroom teacher, Mr. Wilson, entered the classroom, and she quickly settled down. Mr. Wilson walked to the podium, his eyes welling up as he looked at the familiar faces of the students he'd taught for 3 years. He took off his glasses, wiped them, and put them back on, saying with a smile, "You're finally free. 3 years have passed so quickly. You'll all go your separate ways, meet new people, and experience new things. But I hope you won't forget your time at Oakwood High School. Come back and visit any time. You're always welcome. I wish you all the best and a bright future." Mr. Wilson's simple yet heartfelt graduation speech brought a touch of sadness to the students' celebratory mood. Several girls began to cry. Claire Evans was in tears, and even Olivia's eyes were red. Suddenly, a voice, recognizable as the school's gossip queen, broke through the sentimental atmosphere. Hey, Jake, is this thing even working?" The familiar voice instantly dispelled Olivia's sadness. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she looked out the window. On the lawn outside the senior building, Michael was holding a microphone next to a large speaker. He tested the microphone and looked at Jake, who was helping him set up the sound system. Jake, without speaking, pointed towards the building. Students in many classrooms were leaning out, watching curiously. Michael grinned. It seemed everything was working. Jake grumbled, "I must be crazy to go along with this." Michael laughed. "You're only young once. Gotta do something memorable, right?" Jake continued to mutter, "I'm so dead." Michael waved his hand dismissively. "So be it. We've graduated anyway." He picked up the microphone, grinned, and said, "Sorry everyone for interrupting your time." Before he could finish, a shout came from a classroom on the top floor. "Michael Thompson, Jake Wilson, what are you two doing?" "Mr. Wilson, you're here. Perfect. Please be my witness." Michael walked to the front of the lawn with the microphone, looking up at the building. Students in many classrooms were now watching the spectacle. Despite his planning, Michael felt nervous. He rubbed his trembling hand, chuckling at himself. He felt like a teenager again. But that's what youth was all about. He took a deep breath and shouted into the microphone, "Olivia Sullivan from Honors Class A, the exams are over. You said you wanted a romantic gesture for a formal confession. Is this okay? I like you. Will you be my girlfriend?" After a moment of stunned silence, the entire building erupted. Some students excitedly chanted, "Say yes. Say yes." It was just a confession, but the atmosphere felt like a wedding proposal. Michael accepted the enthusiastic blessings. In Honors Class A, the pre-graduation melancholy vanished, replaced by excited chatter. "Whoa, Michael just confessed to Olivia. And in this way, he's so bold. Michael's awesome. Olivia, are you going to say yes?" Mr. Wilson's face darkened. "Unbelievable. These boys are really..." But in the end, he laughed. At the center of it all, Olivia blushed crimson. She was 3 parts embarrassed, 3 parts annoyed. Michael had actually confessed this way, but the remaining 91 parts were pure joy. As if making up her mind, she walked towards the window, under the gaze of her classmates and teacher. She started, but before she could say yes, she saw Michael and Jake, microphone and speaker in hand, being chased by security guards. Olivia burst out laughing, despite the potentially inappropriate timing. Her eyes followed Michael, and she muttered, "What a goofball." Michael Thompson and Jake Wilson ultimately didn't escape. They were caught and taken to the security office to write apology letters. Since they were graduating seniors, the school was lenient and let them go after they finished writing. "I must have been crazy to go along with this," Jake grumbled as they left the security office. Michael chuckled, not bothering to respond. As they emerged, they saw Claire Evans and Olivia Sullivan standing near the school plaza. Claire, arms crossed, teased, "Michael Thompson, pretty bold move. I didn't know you had it in you." Olivia, on the other hand, was incredibly embarrassed, staring at her feet, unable to meet Michael's gaze. Michael nudged Jake with his elbow, but the oblivious guy didn't get it. He had a poke in the ribs before Jake finally understood. Time for his best friend to play wingman. Jake, though reluctant, went over to Claire. "Hey Claire, want to grab a smoothie?" Claire playfully scolded, "Smoothies every time? Can't you come up with something new?" She glanced at Michael and Olivia, realizing that if she stayed any longer, Michael would probably resent her. Tactfully, she went off with Jake. Once Jake had led Claire away, Michael approached Olivia, grinning and reaching for her hand. But Olivia seemed upset and dodged him, pouting. "Why did you do that? Wasn't it a surprise?" "It wasn't a surprise, just shocking," she said, giving him a reproachful look. "Don't ever do that again. It was so embarrassing." Michael smacked his fist into his palm. "I see. So liking you is embarrassing?" Olivia was speechless. Michael grinned. "But I think it's something to be proud of. I want to tell the whole world. His sincere words made her blush. She averted her gaze, nervously fidgeting with her hands behind her back, shyly looking down. Are you that happy? Happy? I'm ecstatic. Michael corrected her. He moved closer and leaned down. So, what's your answer? Will you be my girlfriend? Olivia felt her throat tighten, her palms sweat. Her voice became unsteady. This isn't how it was supposed to happen. The grades aren't out yet. We have to wait until the acceptance letter arrives. Michael feigned disappointment. So, I've been rejected? Guess I'll ask someone else. He turned to leave, and Olivia's face instantly filled with panic. She grabbed his hand. Meeting his amused gaze, she mumbled, "Jerk." But then, she stubbornly held his hand, intertwining her small fingers with his. Her grip was tight, as if she would never let go. Don't ever talk about asking other girls out again, understand? You have to be good to me always. And we're getting married someday. You can never mention breaking up, she added, a hint of playful demanding in her voice. Michael gazed at their intertwined hands, a sweet, indescribable feeling welling up inside him. He looked up at Olivia. So, we're dating now, right? Well, don't be silly, she stammered, flustered. Can I take you home to meet my parents? Olivia's face contorted in a mixture of emotions, but she finally nodded slightly. Uh-huh. Nervously, she added, but you can't just bring me home out of the blue. I need to prepare. This time it's different. I need to make a good impression on Uncle Ben and Aunt Daisy. Gifts need to be carefully chosen. So, you need to give me at least a week's. No, a month's notice. And she was so flustered, she couldn't think straight. Seeing her adorable panic, Michael couldn't help but pull her into a hug. Olivia lightly punched his shoulder. What are you doing? We're in the school plaza. You're too cute. I couldn't resist, Michael whispered in her ear. I've been waiting for this day for so long. It's perfect. Me too, she murmured, burying her face in his shoulder. Thank you. Thank you for coming into my life. She nestled in his embrace, taking comfort in his warmth and familiar scent. After a while, Michael started to feel the heat. Although I initiated the hug, he whispered, "You can let go now. It's a hot day, and I'm starting to sweat." But Olivia only held him tighter, nuzzling her cheek against his chest. She looked up at him defiantly. "I'm hugging my boyfriend. It's allowed." The humid, stifling summer heat in Green Valley was particularly unbearable. Jake Wilson and Claire Evans had bought their smoothies and were walking back to school, each with a drink in hand. Jake was already sweating profusely. Claire chattered incessantly beside him. Michael's so cheesy. A public confession with a boombox? He's such a dork. But it's so sweet, she admitted, unable to hide her envy for her best friend. No girl dislikes surprises, especially from someone they like. As she spoke, Claire kept glancing at Jake. But Jake was oblivious, barely listening. He was busy peeling back the lid of his smoothie to get at the ice. It's so romantic. If someone confessed to me like that at graduation, even if I didn't like them, I might just say yes in the heat of the moment, Claire said loudly, still watching Jake out of the corner of her eye. Jake looked at her, puzzled. He considered her words seriously and offered his thoughtful opinion. That's not good. Being together can't just be based on a spur-of-the-moment decision. You need to know each other well and be sure of your feelings. You also need to think about the future, like personalities, family, and income. Jake analyzed earnestly, giving his advice. If you get together, just because of the atmosphere of the confession, it won't last. Claire gave him a look like he'd grown a second head. Jake said cheerfully, but with Michael and Olivia Sullivan, it's all worked out. Hey, why are you walking so fast? Don't talk to me. Your stupidity is contagious. Can you stop insulting me? Let's just get along. Claire stomped ahead, while Jake, unsure of what he'd said wrong this time, hurried after her. Their occasional bickering filled the air with a lively energy.